All right. I want to say peace, ETM Hotep, as we say, and also Uncle Jasaneb. Welcome to the Seshu Netcher YouTube channel. Tonight is a bit special night. We've decided to entertain a question and answer session. So by we, I mean the Seshu, excuse me, so used to the Seshu, the Shemsu Heru research team, which includes myself, which is brother Wujao, brother Sanjeti Ankra, as well as Asad Imhotep. So we've decided to do a Q&A session pretty much for the publication that we recently published, which is entitled A Contribution to the Debate on the Meaning of the Place Name Kemet. All right. And this was done towards the latter part of April for the ASCAC, the national or annual ASCAC conference. And this particular topic, the meaning of the place name Kemet, has been a hot topic for quite a few decades now, stemming all the way back pretty much to our late and great Dr. Shekan Diop. And from there, you have the Cairo Symposium as well in 1970s. And from there, the conversation has been ensued, throughout different social platforms, forums, and different online outlets. And so every now and then, the conversation gets a little bit more intense and it becomes a focus. And so recently, as of last year, it's been one of those times where a lot of more people will start to bring it up and to question it. So we decided to, instead of just talking about it in passing, as we've been doing for quite a few years now, and for some of us, I know the brother Saramotep, this has been a research question for him for quite some time, and pretty much all three of us, Asar being pretty much has the most tenure with this particular research question. So instead of us just talking about it in passing, we decided to really put more attention and address the issue. And so we decided as a complement to the ASCAC conference to write essays that will complement the presentations. As you all know or may not know, at ASCAC conference or any conference like that, you're given a certain amount of time to give a presentation. And so for this particular conference, the allowed time was around 20 minutes to give a presentation. And this type of question, 20 minutes, there's no way that you can address the issue at all. So in knowing that, the only thing you can do is really just give an introductory or a very concise summary of the topic. So in knowing that, we decided to put together a couple of essays to complement the presentations that would take place at the conference, so that people can go home, take something to digest and read that we wouldn't have time to in a 20-minute presentation. All right, so what resulted from that is a publication, as you see on the screen, and it is available. It was published, I believe, April 20th, I want to say. And so since then, we've given time for people to purchase the publications. It's available on Amazon.com for those who don't have it. If you don't have it, shame on you. And if you do have it, this is the purpose of tonight and today, our question and answer session. So we've allotted time for people to get the book, to read it, digest it, formulate some questions, and come up with some feedback or some commentary. And so we want to entertain that tonight. And so here we are. All right. So with that, just open the panel. On the panel, I have my brother Saramotep and the brother Sanjeti Ankra, and you all can introduce yourself, and then we can kind of give an intro in terms of the book and go on.
Well, I guess I'll go first. This is Brother Asar Imhotep of the Medew-ntr Institute for the Advancement of Science and Culture. Just happy to be here to engage with our supporters and those who are serious about trying to understand ancient African history and the tools that we utilize for that greater project. So just wanted to say peace to everyone who's listening live and peace to those who are going to catch the archives. So you know, have questions, whether you've read the book or not. I'm done.
All right.
All right. All right. So I'll go. All right. Tap, peace to everybody who's listening and those who will be listening afterwards. This is Sanjeti Ankara. I'm a member and the scribe for the Kemetic Temple of Anu, and also initiating Ifa tradition. And I'm here tonight to contribute to the dialogue that we have here regarding the book, a contribution to the debate on the meaning of Kemet, and hopefully we have some really good dialogue here. So I'll save the rest for the conversation.
Okay, so let me just explain to everyone. First of all, I want if you all definitely share the link. I know that technically the scheduling was a little off. It was supposed to be scheduled for right now, but for some reason it scheduled us in 24 hours into the future. So because of that hiccup, please share the link. Let everyone know that we are live, and those who you may know who are interested in this particular topic. All right. So this is how tonight is going to go. I made a post inside of our Facebook group, the Seshu mdw-ntr Facebook group, as a precursor, so people have a chance to actually type out some questions that they've have so far in reading the book. And so we're going to start with those and address those. But after that, we're going to give the link so that anyone in the chat can come in here on the panel and then ask their questions live. Any questions you have, or commentary and feedback. We want to hear it all. All right. And so the only thing that we ask, which is normal communication etiquette, none of us talk over each other, and also just be as concise as possible. Kind of get to the point and be concise, because no telling how many people will come in here, and we don't want the video to stretch out and be too long. All right. So just sit tight for a minute. We are going to open it up. But if you already had any questions posted, we're going to start addressing those shortly. But prior to that, we want to give, just a brief introduction or synopsis of the publication. All right. So we could start there with that. I know the publication is divided into 4 chapters or 4 essays. And so we can give a brief overview of each one of those. So I think, Asar, yours is first, so you can kick it off.
Okay, peace. As Brother Wujawu stated, the book is broken down into 4 sections, and as it stands, I have written kind of the bulk. So I don't know if you want me to do the 3rd chapter too. I'll just do, what I contributed, and then I'll let y'all discuss what y'all did. And so I wrote the intro as well as the 1st chapter, as well as the 3rd chapter. But the introduction is giving a history and a summation to how we got to this particular point in the debate concerning the meaning of the place name Kemet. And so it starts with my matriculation from high school, coming into some expanded African knowledge. And then as a result of that process, hearing these debates, live as they're happening concerning the Africanness of ancient Kemet, and for which this topic was very key or very critical in that larger debate on the identity and the race of the ancient Egyptians. So the introduction outlines that, going up to the more recent debates with Brother Reggie and Netter Neb, and then of course the discussion that we had at the ASCAT conference, because as Brother Wujawu has already stated, this text was written for the event, the ASCAT conference. And so that's what the introduction deals with. So these are actually expansions on our presentations at the ASCAT conference. So when I presented at the ASCAT conference, I presented on the methodology or the methodological considerations that one would need to be privy of and cognizant of when trying to answer this question on the etymology and the meaning of the place name Kemet. So that's what the first chapter for which I wrote is about. So it's an expansion and a more detailed assessment of the methods needed to answer the question. So, and as I stated earlier, I also included another essay, which is chapter 3 in this text, concerning an analysis of the I6, the Gardner sign I6 glyph in the ancient Egyptian writing script, which has the sound consonant sequence value of KM. And so an analysis of that glyph has also been a major part of the debate on the meaning of Kemet. And so people there have been some scholars who have associated the meaning of Kemet and aligned it with their identification of the I6 hieroglyph that gives the consonant value KM for the name Kemet itself. So I propose an alternative, keep wanting to say etymology, an alternative hypothesis for what the I6 glyph is and how it relates, if it at all relates, to the meaning of Kemet. And so, as you can see on the screen, the formal titles of chapter 1 and 3 is methodological considerations and contribution to the identification of the Kim hieroglyph, respectively. So those are my contributions to the discussion, and I'll now pass it to Brother Wujawu.
All right. So to continue, as you all can see on the screen, chapter 2 or essay 2 is entitled Kemet as a toponym. And so in summary, I've spoke on this before. We have a couple of videos about this, but the backdrop for that particular topic as a toponym is, basically dealing with some common sense logic. And so this is something that I wanted to try to express to everyone about this particular issue about the meaning of the place name Kemet, because inherent in the word place name is the word toponym. Toponym is simply a Greek, it's coming from the Greek topos and onym, which is topos is a place and then onym meaning name. So we're saying one and the same thing, place name and toponym. And so I wanted to bring that to the forefront and to show the nature of toponyms of today and in the past, in history and ancient times. And basically we're dealing with locations and places, and there's a variety of those things. So I go over, the names of mountains, the names of water, bodies of water, and locations, and the different kinds of toponyms, if you will. So I want to bring that to the forefront because at no point, the takeaway from that entire essay is at no point on the planet or anywhere has a toponym or a place name ever referred to people, ever. That defies the actual meaning or definition of what a toponym is, its purpose and its function. And so I brought that to the fore just to set the stage for the conversation on the meaning of the place name Kemet. So, we can probably go into detail based on anybody's questions with that. So with that, I pass it on to Brother Sanjeti.
All right. Okay, I was thinking we was going to go through chapter 3. Okay. So my contribution is in chapter 4, and it is the Remetch of Kemet, preliminary notes. So my part is primarily data, where I'm showing that the ethnic marker that the Egyptians have for themselves was Remetch Kemet. And for short, it is Remetch. So Remetch is the term that most people who study Medew Netcher in detail are aware of. But however, there's the quote from Sheikh Job in volume 2 of the General History of Africa, sponsored by UNESCO, where Job had mentioned that the strongest term that the Egyptians had for themselves was Kemet to you. However, I was to look into this question and to answer this question. Is that the only name that they have for themselves? Well, the answer would be no. So the data shows, or we have it as updated or upgraded, if you will, the various forms of the word Remetch from the various texts. You have the Coptic form in there, because I understand that there's a misconception that we skip over Coptic, which is untrue. So the Coptic form is in that short chapter. We know that Remetch is a word meaning human being or person, and then it can mean man. It can also mean woman. Okay, but it's generally used for people. So that's the most common meaning and application of the term. It goes back to the pyramid text of Pepi, 523. So you have it in a short form there, and then we can go through to the story of the shipwrecked sailor, which is a famous Middle Egyptian and Middle Kingdom text. The story of Sinuhe as well. It's in the instructions of Kagemni's father. In the conclusion, we have it there. And most forms are read from right to left. So, we have a plethora of evidence to demonstrate that the word Kemet to you is not the only term that the Egyptians have for themselves. You have this other term, which is used way more frequently than this term, Kemet to you. And of course, there's some research to be done about that, because there's even questions regarding that. And then I'll go through some linguistic comparisons for the word Remetch. So going from the work of Theophilo Benga, the work of Jean-Claude Mboli, both of them have pretty extensive lists showing the presence of the word Remetch in the various forms throughout various African languages, going from Sango to Mboshi in Congo. Of course, we have in the Coptic form, Nuer, Azer, Mbala, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'll give a short list of the various forms of the word Kemet itself. So.
Okay. All right. So hopefully everyone, anyone who does not have the book, you get a gist of what the book is about. Again, if you don't have it, shame on you. But it's available on Amazon.com right now. And, make sure you go and support. And we look forward to your feedback and your questions even later. So this is not the only time that we may have this session, but we just want to give particular people, a chance to digest it and to come back with some questions. All right. So that being said, we're going to jump into some of the questions that were already asked. As I said, we have a Facebook group, the Sesh mdw-ntr Facebook group. And in the group, I created a placeholder for this particular discussion. And so hopefully you all can see on my screen now what I'm doing. I'm sharing the actual post from the group. All right. So let me get my cursor over there real quick so I can. All right. So I'm just going to read. We're going to go down the list. And by the way, in case your screen is a little blurry, I always tell people that on the YouTube video, there's a cogwheel. If you move your mouse over your video that you're watching, if you're on a computer, there's a cogwheel at the bottom. Make sure yours is set to 720p, which is a high quality. And so it will clear up any blurriness that you see. All right. So this is the placeholder. I said this is a placeholder topic for those who purchased a copy of A Contribution to the Debate on the Meaning of the Place Name Kemet to post any questions you may have from reading the text. We will schedule a live question and answer session to address the questions and feedback. The session will also be interactive with an open panel. Post any questions in the comments below. All right, so we're going to go and walk through the questions here. And as I scroll, hopefully you all can see. Sanjay, or sorry, if you could tell me, this looks big enough? People should better read that.
It looks a little blurry, at least for me.
Okay.
I'll have to probably squint to.
Okay, 1 second. Let me try to make it as best as I can here. We are going to blow it up. So bear with me, you all. We'll blow this up a bit. If it will blow up, I guess it won't.
Or maybe we could just do the best that we can. I can still read it. I'm not. Hopefully, Sarah can as well. And we could just do the best we can.
All right. So yeah, it looks like we're gonna be. Okay, I'll just leave it like that. All right. So hopefully people can read it. And plus, we're gonna read it out loud. But I wanted to give people experience to actually read it with us. All right. So the first question. Let's see. And shout out to everyone who's watching and everyone who posted a question. We could do a roll call, but that would take up a lot of time. So shout out to everyone who already participated. All right, so our first question is coming from Ini Heret Sean Califani. And he asked, He asked the question. He says, question, how do you come to your conclusion that Kemet meant farmer, farm, riparian land, etc. back in 2009? So I guess that's directed to Asar Motep.
And read what's the name's post? Who is it? I forgot. Can you scroll down a bit?
Oh, scroll down. Where are we at?
Keep going.
Who is it by?
I forgot. And I'm not looking at it live.
Oh, okay. But what are you looking for? Because I'm already at the end.
Keep going. It's a question. It's by Ini Heret. No, it's by Jehuti Bahat.
Oh, here would love to know what was the first clue that Kemet, Mehet, and Saket are dialectical variants, and if there were any others that you had to rule out or still working on. Some of that one?
Yes. And so I wanted they're kind of related. So instead of repeating myself, I'm going to answer both of those questions at the same time.
All right. And I believe that it actually blew the actual screen got bigger for us. So go ahead. You can go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just sort this out so people can see it clearly, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm going to share my screen now. just keep it on screen to do the full screen, right?
Yeah, you could share. You should be able to share your full screen or the app.
Okay, I'll just share that. And let me know if mine is blurry too.
Now yours is clear.
Okay. So, hold on. Okay. So for those who didn't get to see the questions clearly, I reposted them here so you can read it yourself. Sorry, just taking a drink or something. Okay. So I decided to answer, again, both of these questions at the same time because answering Brother Jehuti Ma'at's question answers Brother Ini Herit Sean's question. So again, he asks, I'm going to skip to the second question. How did you come to your conclusion that Kemet meant farmer, farm, riparian land, etc. back in 2009? I was asked this by someone, so ... And, so then Jehuti Ma'at comes a little later and says, would love to know what was the first clue that Kemet, Mehet, and Seket are dialectical variants, and if there were any others that you had to rule out or still are working on. And so I'll just go into it now. So I don't know how many of y'all caught my presentation concerning a controversy on whether we can use the ancient Egyptian transliterations in the comparisons with other languages for reconstructive purposes. And so in that particular discussion, I put up several different tables such as this so that you could see my process of how I come to certain conclusions. And so part of that discussion, the title of the lecture was called Logic, Mathematics, and Ancient Egyptian Linguistic Comparisons. And so I define mathematics last night as the study of anything that obeys the rules of logic, using the rules of logic, and also the study of patterns and relationships. So I stressed over and over again throughout our discourse about the necessity of establishing patterns, because it's the patterns that we study in math and logic and in linguistics. So, for example, when you see this table that I have here, I've kind of helped and aided the reader who is not used to this type of presentation. To my knowledge, I am the only one who kind of presents it this way. And I'm not saying that you don't find, lexical comparisons with tables, but I like to put what I am comparing in the final column to the right that is labeled correspondences. So in this table, I'm comparing the ancient Sumerian, the ancient Egyptian, and the modern Chiluba Bantu language out of Central Africa, of the Republic of Congo. And what I have highlighted in red and bolded are the consonants of these words that we are examining. And when you look at the consonants, you see, if you look at each column, you'll start to see a pattern in terms of what corresponds frequently within this table that I have here. So in linguistics, when you have a string of letters in a word or phonemes in a word, we identify each letter in the root of the word with a location address. And so the first consonant in the root is consonant 1. So it has the address of C1 or consonant 1. The first vowel of a word has the street address of V1 or vowel 1. And so the second consonant of a root of a word has the street address C2 for consonant 2 or the second consonant. And the second vowel has the street address of V2 or vowel 2 or the second vowel. So what you are looking at are the comparisons of consonants. And we like to compare the consonants first because that is more stable as far as the phonemes of any language over time is concerned. And so vowels change, quite frequently, especially given certain aspects of a language, like vowel harmony, for example. Depending on prefixes or suffixes, for example, or the loss of prefixes or suffixes or stress on syllables, the vowels, may change. And, so those aren't as stable. It's not that we don't compare them, is that the strongest evidence, the core of the word in terms of its meaning and things are associated itself with the consonants. And there are some languages like Semitic where, again, the consonants carry the root meaning, but then there's different nuances of meaning that arise when the vowels change for that consonant root. And so we won't get into that for now. So let's just focus on the first two rows of this particular image that you see. So I'm comparing Sumerian, and you can see that in the first consonant position, they have a T sound. In Egyptian, they do not write the vowels, so all we have are the consonants. So the first consonant for the root is the K sound in Egyptian. In Chiluba, it is the S sound. Now, you'll notice, further that the majority of these forms don't have an S in the first consonant position. But I have this here because I've already done that work. And there, I also have a different table where it's just the KM consonant root in Egyptian compared to an SM or an SL in Chiluba. So this is a bona fide cognate of the word in the first row. So the words dealing in the first row have to deal with illness of some sort. So in Sumerian, ter is a word for illness, disease, or to be ill. And is a variant of that word tab, meaning illness or disease. Now, in Egyptian, you have kemet, a woman's disease. Now, in collagen language, they have this root, but it's a word for cow's disease. And so this T, they believed that it was a feminine T. And so they associated this word. It now has a narrow meaning in Egyptian with a disease of the woman, but it's the root just simply has to deal with disease, period. And so the T actually is a nominalizing T. It's not a feminine T, but because there's a feminine T, the mistake was that it was a feminine, and so that's why they associate it strictly with a woman's disease. So they think that it was a disease for a woman. So in Chiluba, we have Sama, to be sick, to become sick, and then we have the prefixes that nominalize that verb, just like you see with the suffix T in Egyptian. Now it's Jisama or Bisama, and it means sickness or disease. And so on the right, or excuse me, on the far right, you see where the correspondences are. So on the first row is just the first consonant correspondences. So T in Sumerian, K in Egyptian, and S in Chiluba. For the second consonant is R, M, and M. So whenever you see in my work a table, and I really just started doing this with the upcoming publication and the one that we just published, this last column, the columns that you see within is going to be representative of the columns that you see here. So if I have 3 columns here, you're going to see 3 columns in here of correspondences. If I have 2 columns, you'll only see 2 if I'm just doing the consonants, for example. And if I have 4, you'll see 4, et cetera, and so on. So now we get into the second row. So till, which is the verb to end, kim, to end or to end, or end itself as a verb and noun. And then in Chiluba, you have inkum, end, finished. And so this is a nominalizer here, this end here. So I want to just show you first and foremost that with the exception of this top one here, as far as these examples, you'll see that the ancient Egyptian K corresponds to K in the first consonant position in Chiluba. And that the M corresponds to several consonants. Also the M in Chiluba, but also L. And when the L is nasalized, it becomes ind. So that's why you see kanda here, complete whole. But when a B is nasalized, the N in that you see here becomes M. So it's kumba, kumbana, be complete, be enough, complete. So to complete, make complete, to be completed. You see these, forms here. So I have the rules that I just mentioned right here. So you understand, but understand that this is just one table of many so that, when you see these variants of the consonant correspondences, believe me, I have a whole bunch. And so I love to exhaust this. So the point of this slide here is just to show you first and foremost that Chiluba K in the first consonant position corresponds to Egyptian K, and that Chiluba M corresponds to Egyptian M. So we set up that. So now I'm gonna go to the next slide. So remember that I said that, hold on, I'll just skip that, what I was gonna say. I'm gonna hold that off for another slide. So now I'm doing another comparison. And so for those who are familiar with the transliteration of Egyptian, so this is the H, it's a guttural type. Well, H is guttural in itself, but it's a harsh guttural H that we put the dot under it. So it's, and then this word R, so this is a word Heru, meaning mountain. In Chiluba, it's Mukuna, mountain. And so the L becomes N. But notice, and so I'll just go down, I'll just do the first three so you can see the pattern that we're showing here. So Heru, top, upper. In Chiluba, Kale or Kule or Kulu, top, upper, highest. In Egyptian, Heru, heaven, sky. In Chiluba, Kulu, heaven, sky. Heru, be cut when ripe of corn. And Chiluba, Kole, ripe, mature, grow. So we can go down the list and you will see consistently that Egyptian dotted H corresponds to Chiluba K. But didn't we just say that Chiluba K corresponds to K in Egyptian? So we're seeing here that Chiluba K corresponds to at least 2 consonants in Egyptian. And that, the R in Egyptian corresponds to NL in the second consonant position. And this K also in Chiluba, in many instances, becomes H. So that's what you see here in these 2 examples. So you have Lekela, Kuakala, silence, quiet, Akula, quiet. And then you also have in a dialectical variation, Hola, silent, peace, quiet. And that corresponds to Heru, be quiet at peace, and then Geru, silent. And so this informs us that that the original sound was K, and in this dialect it was voiced, and in this one it was aspirated or whatever this sound is. It may be an H sound with a glottal stop at the end, an emphatic or whatever. So, but what you see here is consistent and it is regular. The pattern is clear. So this gave me a clue. If Chiluba K corresponds to both K and dotted H in Egyptian, I bet you that Chiluba KM consonant sequence will correspond to dotted HM in the consonant sequence in Egyptian. So we go to the next slide, and my hypothesis is verified. So we have the root dotted HM, a club, a weapon for beating the wash, or an instrument used for beating the wash. In Chiluba, the cognate for it is Jikombo, a traveling stick, a cane, a sign of power, staff, rod, scepter. Then you have hem, surprise. In Chiluba, we have Kima, or Kema, wonder at, admire. And we have different variations of this. So in Egyptian, the root is doubled. And so you get this notice of surprise. Well, in Chiluba, they didn't double it. They added a prefix. So when the chi, you say chikimu, it means exclamation of surprise, astonishment, admiration. Jikima, astonishment. So we can see the different ways that they come, based off the root. So we can hypothesize that the root in Egyptian is the same root here in Chiluba, meaning wonder or wonder at. So hem, crush, press, and comma, squeeze, close, etc. Compress, crush, express. Hem, majesty, chief, sovereign. Chiluba, kum, chief, or someone of social weight. Then we have wahem, report of speech. Bruit, spread a rumor or report abroad. Bruit also means an abnormal sound or a spokesman. So in Chiluba, we have mukuma, report, noise, sound of a gun. So you see that the Egyptian, that the Chiluba corresponds perfectly with these forms that you see in Egyptian. Well, during my other experiments, I also noticed that the dotted HM also has a syllable. Some of the words have syllable reverse forms. And so my hypothesis is that if we switch the syllables, so instead of dotted HM in Egyptian, and we have M dotted H, that regardless of the sequence, that M dotted H is still going to correspond to KM in Chiluba. So this is exactly what we see. So we have Mehi to flee, Chiluba, Kima to run, Meh, Kiniyeth to embrace someone, Chiluba, Koma to embrace, place arms around the body, Meh, arm, hand, forearm, claw, paw, Chiluba, Chikomo, fist, Meh, activity associated with spinning, Chiluba, Kuma, spinning, making thread, make fabrics, weave, etc., etc., etc. Is consistent here. And so this lets me know this, how should I say? This provides me with enough evidence to propose another hypothesis. So now that I have demonstrated that KM sequence in Chiluba corresponds to Egyptian KM, dotted HM, and M dotted H, the next hypothesis is that KM is going to correspond to M dotted H or H dot M. So let's see how that pans out. So I don't have them highlighted on this side, but by now y'all should be able to understand my slides. So we have the word Kim, complete, in, pay, total up, amount to, put an end to credit, profit. And so meh, fill, be full, pay in full, make whole, complete. Kimmy, black bull, Kemet, black cow, mehe, holy bull. Kimmy, snake, a black desert cobra. Mehen, the coiled one, a serpent spirit. Mehi, serpent demon. And so I put here Kemet, but I'm stressing this determinative, the M36, which is the canal glyph, and is used for all words dealing with flood. And so we have Mehiu, flood, water, now. Kimu, seeds or fruit. Mehiu, flax, linseed. Kemet, with the irrigated land, farmland, irrigable land. Mehu, parcel of land, land plot. And just for good measure, if we're still arguing Kemet, crocodile tail, you also have Mehu, crocodile. Now, some say that this derives from the drowned one, but that is up for debate. So you can see the pattern again. So as a result of those correspondences and those tests that I did previously, it tells me that I'm going to find a dialectical variant. My hypothesis is I'm going to find a dialectical variant in the M dotted H form. And so that's what we see here. And I actually give more examples in our text, the contribution to the meaning of the place name, to the debate on the meaning of the place name Kemet. So here's just another one. Kim, crown of Lower Egypt. Then you have Mehu, S, crown of Lower Egypt. Meh, crown of Lower Egypt. Mehu, Lower Egypt. Kim, service, duty, work. Mehi, to care for. And then Henu, service, job. And I also demonstrate that H, dotted H and N, are variants of dotted H and M. So you can see that this is consistent, and it's doing these types of experiments that allow for me to find all the doublets. And so if you have our text, let me see, I give I show that Idebwi is a dialectical variant of Kemet. And I do all these types of experiments. So like when you go back over the text, if that's something that you didn't understand, it'll become clearer now. With all the different variations, either dialectical or as a result of some, environmental change in the word that, you find all these different variations of Kemet. And so the logical argument that one can come from this, as I discussed in chapter 1, is that if Kemet meant black land, then all the dialectical variations that correspond with Kemet, like Mehet, is also should mean black land. And with all the different variations that I've provided in the text, none of them mean black land or black people. And so this, by way of, what we call logical equivalency, that's what you're seeing in these variants here, and the proof by contradiction, one cannot argue that the word Kemet means black. And so another thing that I kept in mind was the classifiers, or the so-called determinatives. And so when I'm matching these words, they have to be in the same class. And we'll know they're in the same class by the actual determinatives. So these weren't picked arbitrarily. So the added rigor of the classifiers further confirms the arguments in which I made. And so another test, is to look at, I didn't put this in the book, but this table is in my upcoming book, is, to do the same thing in other languages. So I decided to use the Sango language. So remember my argument that the word Kim for black derives from a word for hair, right? Now, if I'm going to find a cognate for the word for black in Egyptian, the ideal state is to find a language where both the same word for hair and black exist in the same language. And that we know that the word for black derived from the color of the hair. And so in the Sango language, this is exactly the case. And so we noticed that, and I included Coptic here because to show why, Coptic really doesn't help you answer this question on the word Kemet, because it doesn't have the word for hair, and it doesn't have most of the Kim words. It only has 3, I think, Kim words: Kim black, Kim Egypt, and Kim, I think, it's one more, I think. It may be, this may be the only 2. Because it doesn't, none of the other words of Kim survive in Coptic. But in Sango, we have at least these 5. So remember from last night that, when we're talking about how many correspondences are necessary to show regularity in a pattern, and I provided a source that argued 3 to 5 at minimum. So you can see here, this is 5. And so, as I discussed in the upcoming text, that the word Kim, saying hair, that what we call shin for hair, the earlier version of that word was Kim. And so I go through the proof of that. And so that's why I have the star, the asterisk next to the word Kim, to let you know that this is a proto-reconstruction in this case, for Proto-Egyptian, Kim. So it doesn't survive in Coptic, but notice in Sango, we have kwa or koa, hair, fur, fuzz, bristle, feather. And I should let you know that the word mehet feather and hair and mane also exists. So I do all types of tests. But what's happening here in Sango is that the M sound that was in the proto language weakened to W, and this W became O. And so the original vowel that was there was dropped. And so you'll find both of these variations in the dictionary for Sango, kwa or koa. And so the same thing with black. In in Coptic, you have kame, and then kamon, the verb version, be, become black. And then in Sango, you have voko, black, dirty, dark. And so what is here, this vo is a prefix. And so they have another, for example, they have another word for white that also has this vo or vu in front of it. So this is not part of the root. This is a prefix. And so the root, again, is ko. It matches. I have it highlighted here. So when it comes to the word kemet, as a general word for country, we just have keme or kime, Egypt. And then we have kotoro, country. And actually, this is an exact full correspondence to the word kemet. Because as I discussed in the text, and which I have shown in the debates with Brother Reggie and Netter Neb, is that the T suffix in the word kemet, which I told you is not feminine, it's a word for land, is the same word in Sango, but it's just fully. And so in kemet, what we transliterate is lowercase t, capital A, which is ter. The R is dropped. The same thing in Sumerian. But in Sango, it is kept. So they say kotoro. So if this was, in Middle Egyptian, it would be kim toro in the full. So the Sango reinforces the other arguments I've made using Sumerian and Chiluba, that this T is not feminine. It is an actual word for land. And so we see the same thing here with Kim complete, the same sound issue where the M becomes W and then W becomes O for the word complete, whole, entire, entirely, entire, and then Kim, service, duty, work, co-op, work, job, task, employment. So the pattern is clear. You cannot witness this pattern and then come with an illogical conclusion that these Sango forms are not cognate with the forms that you see in Middle Egyptian. And so it reinforces the notion that the word kemet has to deal with a place, a country, but more specifically a land with water and grass, as we argued. It's a livable space and land. And so you already know by now, or should know by now, my arguments as far as, other cognates in Sumerian and in Chiluba. And so here are some other variations. These were provided by Dr. Oscar Pafuma for Bantu languages in Cameroon and surrounding areas. So you have Kim, Kam in the Bassa language in Cameroon, farm, Kam, farm, and Douai, and Ikam. All of these words are for farm. And then just like what we see in Sango, with the same root becomes a word for country or region, or even city or rural area. So it's by doing these experiments that I was able to ascertain that the word kemet meant, a riparian land. And so, y'all know the other details, y'all would have to go on my website, my YouTube page and see the full breakdown as far as how we came to it using Sumerian and Chiluba and other Bantu languages. So I will end with that. And so to answer Jehuti's question, it is basically by the same process. So the same process that I did with these forms, I did with Saket. So that is discussed in our text in the contribution to the debate of the meaning of the place name Kemet, the same methodology. So it shows you that no matter the dialectical variation of the word Kemet, none of the other equivalent forms mean black land or black people. And so we have to, by the rigor of the comparative method and the logic, in terms of the propositions and the consequence, the conclusion that this is in fact right and exact, and there is no other answer. So I hope I answered your questions, and so I'll free up the space to so we can get some more questions in.
All right. So, okay. And when I open up the panel, if that if kind of sparked a follow-up question or what have you, then by all means, bring that up. So I'm going to reshare the questions to continue with the previous questions. All right. So I have on the screen, let me see if I can get my cursor back over here. Give me 1 second. All right, so I have my cursor over here. All right, so that was Any Heret, Sean's question, and Jehudi Ma'at. So that was put together. So I'm gonna have to back up some more, make sure we didn't miss anything. Okay, so we're back at the top. Okay, there's a little humor in the group too. Chief X, he says he heard Compton is a play off the word Kemet and it means black land. So that was pretty funny. Let's see. Okay, so now the next question is from Sean also. And he says, question, Asar, you made a claim that many Egyptologists are not trained in historical comparative linguistics and that we can't rely on the Remich text alone. Why is that? Aren't they the authority on the subject? And he's asking for a friend. So what's your response to that?
Well, one is just a simple fact that most Egyptologists are not trained in linguistics. It's only a few. But the reason why you can't use philology alone, even though that's the starting point, is that when we're doing etymology, as I discussed before, there's various areas of etymology. So there's morphology, there's semantics, pragmatics, there's, of course, the philological aspect, but there's also the cultural and historical aspect of it. And so, and I forgot to mention phonology. So phonology, morphology, and semantic pragmatics, that's an issue of linguistics. And so if they're not trained in linguistics, they're not even seeking to look for those, to answer the question using those tools or using those features of language. And so a good example is that, for example, the word Kemet is a place name. And so in every single instance of the word Kemet in the ancient Egyptian writing script, they're only using it to refer to a place. So because it's referred to as a proper noun, it is never describing anything. So in order for us to get to the heart of it, we can't just simply use the philological approach because it's not telling us anything as far as its inclusion in the sentence. So it's just like I'm going to Nevada or I'm going to New York City this weekend. Well, the way that I'm using it in the sentence only tells you that it's a place. I'm not using it that in a way that you can get clues to what the root of the word means. So just because I say I'm going to New York City doesn't mean I even know what the word York means. And so there's no clue in my statement that'll let you know that the word York has some meaning, that I'm referring to directly in my statement. So this is what I mean by that, by those statements, that they can't, there's no way, using the ancient Egyptian sentences that you can get to the deeper meaning. You have to use comparative linguistics. You have to consult other languages. And so that's my answer.
Okay, and I just want to add on to that as well, is a related question that always pops up. Is that the Remich themselves in the literature, the scribes, they didn't write a full-blown explanatory text, like how we have today with dictionaries and so on and so forth, that will explain everything. So it becomes a little difficult. So one of the things that we run across, one of the problems is that, a lot of the names of different deities are not explicitly defined. That you're not going to find a papyrus where it's going to have a list from A to Z of all the deities, and then it's going to just define them as conveniently as we have today, in our dictionaries. So things are defined somewhat by the context and the literature, and outside of that, externally through the comparative methods. So that's part of the job and part of the task that we have to do, and kind of the work that we have to do. So I know that's kind of a related question that comes up sometimes as well. All right. So let's just move forward and keep on going down. Okay, so then it seemed like the brother Sean had kind of hogged the the comment section here. So next question is from Sean as well. He says, can you demonstrate using the WB, which stands for the German Egyptian Wörterbuch, Sprocket, the Egyptian German dictionary. And by the way, that particular dictionary, I believe it is the most extensive dictionary that we have to date so far in terms of number of entries that it is. And a lot of scholars will refer to that work, but it's written in German. So there is, some learning curve there. But it's a dictionary that's highly used by scholars. But anyway, so he says, can you demonstrate using the Wörterbuch the frequency of use for us, so we can see exactly what you're referring to and the use of the word in question, referring to page 34.
Okay, now I started to prepare to answer this question, but the website, the TLA seems to be down right now because I can't pull it up.
Okay, so let me just while you're talking, I'm gonna see if that's just for you, or that I'm gonna try it myself as well.
So it's hard to do with the physical copy of the book because you literally have to. No, it's going to be very hard, almost impossible for you to do. Will take you a lifetime to sit there and manually count yourself how many times the word Kemet is actually used in Egyptian text. So what I was referring to was the TLA website, and because not only does it have the Wörterbuch entries from Ehrman and Grappall, the Ehrman and Grappall dictionary, but it also has transliterations and translations, mainly in German, of various Egyptian texts. And so when I'm talking about the frequency, it's the frequency of the usage of the word Kemet in those texts that are present in the TLA database. So it has a feature on there where you can search a word and it will tell you how frequently it is used in the database in which they have. And I have to stress that that this is not all the Egyptian text, just the number of texts that it has in its own database. And so that's where that number and stuff comes from. But I can't pull it up for some reason on my screen, on my computer. And I don't know if Ujawu had any luck either.
No, it's down. So yeah, it's so hopefully it's down temporarily, because that's a very valuable resource that a lot of, like I said, a lot of scholars use the electronic version as opposed to the handwritten version, because, you know, as you just explained, there's a lot of advantages of using a database and querying a database versus flipping through hundreds of pages in a handwritten document that's written in a foreign language. All right, so yeah, we're gonna have to put that one on standby. Put that one on hold, and so I'm gonna scroll and go to the next question. Let's see. So we have another one from Sean. How important is the color classifier or determinative in or to this discussion?
I think it is very important, as I've stressed all throughout the years, because, you know, the ancient Egyptians were never shy in putting hieroglyphs to better clarify certain terms. And some of them, they just go overboard. They put all the classifiers together at once. Like there's a word for flood that has the 3 water ripples, the canal glyph, and the irrigated land glyph, to let you know that is overflowing the water across the land from the canal, you know, into, you know, the shores and etc. And so I just found it interesting that, you know, when the ancient Egyptians wanted to make sure to let you know that Osiris was black, or Isis was black, or that anything was black, that they always had the hair determinative. But when it came to Kemet, not one example exists with the Kim determinative. And so I found that odd. And so it is more so a test. If the word Kemet derives from a root Kim, black, you would expect to at least find one example of Kemet written with the D3 hieroglyph, because that's the glyph that they use to represent the word black in the actual language of Egyptian. So it was more so a test. And to say, so if you believe that the word Kemet derives from a word Kim meaning black, then we should see at least one example of the word Kemet as a full version written with a color glyph. Either of the color glyphs, because they have a general one for color, which is these small pellets, and then they have the word specifically for, the glyph, the D3 glyph specifically for the color black, and neither one of them is ever used. And so the other glyph that we use for pellets, those are used in words for mud and ground. And so if Kemet meant black land and they're referencing the land, why didn't they put, this glyph? I think it's like M33 or something like that. I forgot right off the top of my head, but or N33, something like that. Mm-hmm. So, with the absence of those glyphs that they use frequently and consistently to denote color and the color black specifically, it informs us, it just gives us another clue that the word Kemet has nothing to do with the color black.
All right, so, and that's pretty straightforward. I just want to say something about classifiers in and of themselves, determinatives in and of themselves. Quite often we always let people know to not allow anyone to and people themselves never to diminish or try to diminish the importance of determinatives, what scholars will refer to as determinatives, also classifiers, etc., because it is an orthographic or something that was put into the writing system specifically to give meaning to the glyphs that precede it. All right. So determinatives, as we understand, they are mute, which means they're not pronounced. And in our transliterations of these various different words, we also do not transliterate them as well. And so it becomes hard when someone asks you, what does a particular word mean, when they're only showing you the transliteration. And the reason for that is, absent of the determinative, there are a lot of words in the Egyptian language written identically, and we will refer to those as homographs, which means same graphically. And so they would look the exact same if it weren't for the determinative that comes at the end of the words. Okay? And so so we can't downplay that whatsoever. And also, point two is that not every single word is always going to have a classifier or determinative. But for most substantives in the language, which most people will call nouns in the language, they would include a determinative. All right. And depending on the environment and the space, for aesthetic reasons, sometimes these determinatives may be omitted. All right. So I want to just lay that out there for everyone for their understanding. All right. And if anybody has questions, further questions on that, we can get into it. But I just wanted to put that on the table. All right. So, all right. So let's keep scrolling then. And, okay. And I think, okay, next question. Like I said, the brother Sean basically hogged the questions here so far. So he asked another question. What is Sahidic Coptic and its relevance to the discussion? And I believe brother Sanjeti had something for that.
Okay. Briefly, Sahidic is a dialect of Coptic, and Sahidic is a dialect coming out of Upper Kemet or Upper Egypt. Otherwise, it is the southern Egyptian region. Now, you have Sahidic, in which there's a lot of Coptic texts available. So this allows researchers to do the comparisons and to understand the Egyptian language. And then there's other dialects, such as like Boheric, which you will find that in the northern region or the Delta region in the Western Desert. So now, one thing I would like to say about Coptic in general, which supports one of the reasons why other African languages are used to compare with Middle Egyptian. See, understand that what's called the Middle Egyptian is considered the classical language, if you will. Now, Coptic grammatically is more akin to what's called later Egyptian. So you have earlier Egyptian class, in which you have Old Egyptian and Middle Egyptian. And then you have later Egyptian, in which you have late Egyptian, Demotic, and Coptic. So if we are looking to understand Middle Egyptian, and we're looking at other African languages, then understand that Coptic is closer to the grammatical forms of Demotic and late Egyptian. Is not as close to Middle Egyptian. So this also answers the question, why don't we use Coptic, say, as the primary? Because when we're looking at Middle Egyptian, Coptic is closer to what's called later Egyptian, not earlier Egyptian.
All right. So, yeah, that's all right. So let's move forward. Well, one thing I'll add, just for clarity on some related questions, because in my mind as you're answering, and I read the question, there's some related questions. So just for clarity, so people will know that Coptic is the name of a writing system as well as the name of a language, and so you have to have that understanding to avoid the confusion where people actually think that Coptic is a Greek language, and that would be false. It's not a Greek language, but the writing system adopted the Greek characters. And so we're talking. So the confusion comes in because Coptic is a word used to label both the language and the writing system. Okay, just like Arabic. When people see Arabic script, they call that Arabic, and then what people are saying out of their mouths, they call that Arabic as well. And so there can be some confusion there. So I just want to point that out to people so that we won't confuse that and understand that Coptic is an African language, but it actually utilizes the Greek characters. All right, and then that could be a whole nother discussion about the origin of those characters. And I think Sanjeti did some work on that as well. But that'll probably be for a whole nother conversation. All right. So,
and if I may, let me just elaborate on that before we move on. Now, the importance of Coptic is that it allows us to get a glimpse. And remember, the key term glimpse. Remember, a glimpse is not always a full-on analytical look or perspective. A glimpse of how the ancient Egyptian language may have sounded in different dialects or from different periods or different areas. It doesn't represent the entirety of all the, I'm going to say Egyptian languages or Egyptian language dialects. So, for example, it is because of Coptic is the reason why I would say Haltic. So that's why you have the O between the H and the T in today's rendering. So that comes out of Coptic. So that will be, add to the importance of, say, Sa'idic Coptic coming out of Upper or Southern Kemet. However, that does not represent all of the variations. That's just one, and there's many others.
Okay, all right. So now hopefully everybody has their pen and pad and are taking this information in. All right, so I'm gonna go back to the questions here. All right, so finally somebody different here. So we have the brother Chavis, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing your name. And he says, how do you think your interpretation of the I-6 glyph will be accepted by mainstream Egyptology with all the evidence you provided? And I'm assuming he's directing that to Asar.
I think that it will be accepted well. So two Egyptologists that I know who have assessed it, approve of the analysis that I provided. And especially because I gave, the primary images, and that helped to put it over the top for them. So, again, it takes a while. It's going to take me publishing in, journals and going to conferences and making this argument more thoroughly that this, will penetrate into the mainstream of Egyptology to be, accepted or rejected. So it is fairly new, like really new, like last month. So it's going to take a while before, you start to really get some large feedback from Egyptologists on that point.
All right. And that reminds me, just another comment is that what we should notice is that what takes place in mainstream educational curriculums, like even in K through 12 schools, the textbooks that are used in schools, there's a method and procedures on how schools acquire which textbooks and which ones they choose, which companies that they use, and so on and so forth. And by us knowing that, we should also be aware that when new information comes forward with new evidence and things, it takes time for it to get to that, level of change on where Asar was saying mainstream, what we're calling mainstream. And so just keep that in mind. So a lot of times what's put in print in hard covers and textbooks and so on and so forth, it represents a past tense, Now, not to say that any information in the past is bad or wrong, but we have to have that understanding that new information that may contradict old information, it takes time to saturate and get to that level of mainstreamism. Okay, so keep that in mind. Just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. All right. So
yeah, let me elaborate on that.
Mm-hmm.
See, and it's because of that reality. When people ask us questions like, well, what credible Egyptologist or what credible researcher or what credible this and that has accepted your view or along those lines, and people will ask that question. Now, this doesn't apply to everybody, but people ask that question in a disingenuous way. Things take time. So because it hasn't gone to quote unquote mainstream, therefore it's invalid. Right. So we get these types of comments and questions sometimes, and of course this doesn't apply to the Chevis, if I'm saying the name correctly. But we get this question by others, in a disingenuous way, or the person being really aggressive, or they've run out of things to say, or they've lost the argument.
Yeah, because then it's an appeal to an authority issue, and so who in authority agrees with you? Whether everyone agrees with me or not is irrelevant. It's based on the weight of the evidence, and if you are competent enough to evaluate the evidence. Because certain people, as we have seen, even, in these debates, they'll hold a position for political reasons and ignore all evidence. And so just because, for example, somebody that holds a degree in Egyptology decides that they don't want to move forward, based on the weight of the evidence, does that mean that you stop? And so we got to learn. This is why I teach methods and stress methods and competency, so you can evaluate for yourself and you come to your own conclusions.
Exactly. And that's a good point to bring up, because that's what we are bombarded with. And people may not understand that is a direct violation of a logical fallacy called appeal to authority. And we have to be mindful and careful of that. So on the screen, actually, Chavis has a second question, but we pretty much answered that one as well. Okay. And he asks, what will it take for the consensus to accept, own up, and change the mistakes made in Egyptology? And it's the weight of the evidence. And then as it permeates through the different channels of Egyptology, the evidence has to be in such a superior way. The method has to be such a superior way to where it persuades, because we have to understand scholarship. When we're talking about consensus, that is, it takes convincing, persuasion, and then that which persuades and convince, which is supposed to be the evidence itself. And then you have skilled people who are able to discern the evidence. And so that is where you get your peer reviews and so on and so forth. By peer, it's not because somebody's the same age or because somebody's same skin color. It's the degree of the skills and the competency of a particular subject matter that they are able to discern and evaluate the evidence. Okay, so I can't stress that more. All right, so that's I don't know if you all have anything to add to
that. Yeah, just think about it like this. Diop proposed that Kemet means black people in 1974. So while they had a heated debate at the conference, outside of the conference, it had not been debated in scholarly circles until the late and mid 90s. Mm-hmm. But even still, like, people will write, but they'll write in their publications, whether they agree or not with whatever's position. It's never a debate. about it. And so no one wrote a paper evaluating both arguments, none of that until me. So, not until technically 2014, but not really until 2019 has a formal argument evaluating both claims been formalized. And the beginning of that is with this publication, and then there's publications coming after this.
All right, so
that'll be the publications that will be debated, and so that'll be presenting at conferences and introducing and getting feedback from other Egyptologists and things of that nature. So I hope that answers the question.
All right, so let's keep going. So I see the brother Sean has another question here, and we'll be wrapping it up on the questions online, and then we're going to open it up. So just a reminder to those who joined in, first of all, I want to say ETM Hotep, welcome. You are joining us. We are the Shemsu Heru research team, the authors of the recent publication, a contribution to the debate on the meaning of the place name Kemet. And so we're taking any and all questions about that publication. If you don't have it, shame on you. I'm going to put the guilt trip on you. Shame on you. I posted a link on Amazon where you can get it if you don't have it. All right, so to continue, Sean has another question. He says, in the book, the 049, by the way, when you see these codes 049, Sar mentioned N33, and so on and so forth, these are Gardner codes that are used to identify glyphs by code. So they're only a reference number. They're not meant to be taken as anything meaningful other than that. All right, so 049 will let people know, okay, which glyph we're talking about, because we're not going to sit here and describe or be able to draw glyphs at every occasion. All right, so he says in the book 049, the Newt symbol is covered. Outside of Van Lep, have you come across any other support for this hypothesis as of 049 glyph, meaning water, basin, village, irrigation, etc.?
Hold on. I think I mentioned in the text, like in a footnote, I can't remember what page it is. Let me see if I can locate it real quick.
Well, while you say that, what people are seeing on the screen as well is Sean's next question, and I think we kind of covered that, the color determinative in your previous answer, as far as the hair glyph and the pellets, N33 and the D3.
Okay. All right. So I mentioned on page 73 in a footnote 36, I state that regarding Van Lep or Von Lep, he is not alone in this reinterpretation of the sign. See also K. Kuhlmann, and that German phrase or that article where the sign is cited as a circular dam protecting an urban conglomerate. So there have been other Egyptologists who question the validity of the 049 being a town symbol, an urban center symbol. And so Van Lep is one, Kuhlmann is another, but he argues that it is a dam, and so it's outside of specifically Van Lep and myself. I think we're the only two that at least that I have found. It's not to say that there are others. Remember, there's thousands upon thousands of articles and books on Egypt, and it is impossible for you to read everything. But to my knowledge, he is the only other person. So technically his came out before mine in terms of his particular argument from 1997. But, early in my career, I noted that this was an irrigated land crossing together. And I made that in my 2014 argument for the EgyptSearch.com website, that publication. And so I only found this one later after that publication. And so it just reaffirmed for me, what I initially argued in 2014.
All right. So hopefully, get my cursor back over here. All right, and like I said, he asked about the color determinative, and so we spoke on determinatives and the usual color determinatives. Words that describe color are usually determined by the hieroglyph or pellet glyph, which is N33 for those who are familiar with the Gardner codes. And that pretty much. Oh, and his other question here is if the plural stroke classifier determinative doesn't always render the word plural, then how many other words are we translating? And so, well, let me just give some information about that, and then we can kind of chime in on that. So remember, his question is, if the plural stroke classifier determinative doesn't always render the word plural, then how many other words are we mistranslating? So I just want to share. Let's see, where's my share? Okay. So just briefly, because like I said, we're going to be pretty concise, but I just want to give you all this information, and we can go into it in depth on another occasion, another video. And I've actually done this when it comes to gender and number. So what's being asked about when we discuss plural, we're talking about the number, and these are features of language where you have grammatical categories, and gender and number are two of those categories. And so, briefly, let me get my cursor over there. Okay, so I'm just going to read a bit, and then I'll just summarize. So, gender is a grammatical category considered to be an inherent quality of substantives. And again, substantives are what we normally would call nouns. All right. Common gender divisions include masculine and feminine, feminine, and neuter. And then we have animate and inanimate. In a few languages, the gender assignment of substantives is solely determined by their meaning or attributes, like biological sex, humanness, or animacy. However, in most languages, this semantic division is only partially valid, and many substantives may belong to a gender category that contrasts with their meaning. And I'll give an example of shenit, which is a grammatically feminine word, but it's referring to a court of men when we see it in the literature. So that's grammatical gender, and I'm not going to go too far into that because this question is more so about number. So I'm going to skip on down to number so we get some understanding of that. So number is a grammatical category that indicates count distinctions such as 1, 2, or 3 or more. English divides substantives into two numbers. They're either singular or plural. Whereas Rani Kemet, and by the way, Rani Kemet is the indigenous name of the language. So when we say Rani Kemet, we're talking about Egyptian in general. Whereas Rani Kemet distinguishes three numbers. We have singular, and then plural, and then dual. Singular substantives refer to one entity, plural substantives refer to more than two, and dual refers to two entities that are usually form a pair. Only count substantives occur in the singular, the plural, and the dual. Mass substantives such as the word irip, which is a word for wine, and collective substantives such as abet, which is the word for family, are always counted as singular and marked as such by adjectives, pronouns, and verb agreement. Okay, so just to highlight this, when we look at this word here, irep, which is the word for wine, we see these three strokes here. These three strokes, to most people, they will look at this word and automatically assume that this word is plural, grammatically plural, as well as this word abet, and they'll look at this because of the three strokes. They will assume that it's a plural, grammatically plural, that is. And they would be incorrect. And so Sean's question is, if the plural strokes does not always render a word plural, then how many other words are we mistranslating? So the problem is that people with their assumption, and it's mainly how the language has been taught for quite a few years, is that most people will learn and call these three strokes, they'll say the three plural strokes. And I caution people not to do that and simply just refer to it as three strokes. Now, these three strokes are determinatives. So these are actually determinatives, and they're mute. And we actually do not transliterate them. So when you see a word transliterated with the W indicating a plural, that W is not a reflection of these three strokes. Okay? And so I'm going to skip on down. As a matter of fact, this is text that's coming out of an upcoming grammar book that I'm currently working on. So I'm going to come here and just share this with you all about plural forms. So the plural forms of masculine and feminine substantives are marked with a W ending added to the singular form of those substantives. For the plural of feminine substantives, the W is placed before the T ending. Hence, this is why you see it transliterated with the WT, like that. There are three ways in which each ending is represented in the actual writing system. So way number one is with phonographs. All right. And these phonographs, by the way, are signs or glyphs that represent sounds. All right. Just briefly. So the least common method was with phonographs used to spell out the declensional endings added to the singular forms. So you'll see it with the coil rope or the quail chick for masculine, or you'll see it with the quail chick and the raised bread loaf or the bread loaf alone, because often the quail chick is omitted. So you'll see it in these two ways for the feminine plural. Okay. But like I said, this is the least common method to denote plurality in the writing system. Now, for both genders, the phonographs were written before any determinatives and separated with a dot in transliteration. So this is how we transliterate it. So, for example, brothers will be transliterated as SN.W. The W will represent a quail chick that you see here in the glyphs. And hopefully that's big enough for people to see it. For the feminine plural, we have senut or senwet, depending on how people pronounce it. The WT, you have the W for the quail chick here, and the bread loaf representing the W and the T. Sisters. The quail chick and the coil rope representing the W for the plural was often omitted in the writing, especially for plural feminine, resulting in the singular and the plural looking alike. So we have senet for a singular sister, and then we also have it looking identical, senwet or senut for sisters. And the only way that we can know that is context to make the distinction. All right. Now, in transliterations, like I said, the W we separated with a dot, and omitted glyphs we put inside parentheses. So that's just for your FYI if you ever see that. Now, so that's one way. That's way number one. The second way to represent plural is with replication. And this is more so a method that was done in the Old Kingdom or in Old Egyptian. We refer to it as the archaic method. And so, for example, the word tepu, which means heads, will be written with three glyphs. The word for foreign countries, plural, chasut or chaswet, depending on how people pronounce it, will be duplicated three times. The hill glyph will be duplicated three times. All right, so this is an old way. Now, alternatively, the scribes may write out the phonographs for the singular form and then follow it with the tripling of the determinative. So we have the word sa'u, which is plural for sons, and we have sa, which is the pintail duck alone, and then the tripling of the determinative will indicate its meaning should be plural. Okay, so we have sa'u. Likewise, hemet, singular would be for wife, and then hemut or hemwet for wives, plural. the tripling of the determinative. And then occasionally occasionally we also have the phonographs spelling out the full word and the reduplication also. So here are two examples of that. In the masculine, we have the word seru, which is officials, and it's always spelled out. We have the S, R, and the W. And then we have the three duplications of the determinative. We have the next one for feminine. We have nahut or nahwet, depending on how you pronounce it, for sycamore trees. And we have it spelled all the way out and then the tripling of the determinative. Okay, so those are two ways so far. Now, the third way, which is the most common way, is with strokes. And so with the strokes indicated plural, and this is why we don't call them the plural strokes, but they should just be referred to as three strokes, and you'll see why. So the strokes were written either horizontally, vertically, or grouped together, depending on, the glyphs nearby. And we also have these three pellets or three dots that were also occasionally used in the same way. So here's some examples. So we have Ibu for hearts, Sa'u, Chafetiu, and I'm not going to read them all, but we have masculine and feminine. So on the feminine side, I'll read one. We have Sinwet or Sinut, Sawet or Sa'ut, etc. All right. Now, these methods were occasionally combined where the scribes included the phonographs for the declensional endings along with the strokes. But however, the three strokes replaced the archaic tripling. So these three strokes that you see here, it derived or developed from the archaic way of reduplicating the determinative. All right, so I want to stress that. So these are three determinatives duplicated, and then what later became the stroke to replace it. So as these are determinatives reduplicated, these three strokes are determinatives reduplicated. All right, it's three in number. Okay, so this is why we say this is a determinative. It's not part of the word. All right, this is why we don't transliterate that. All right, and I'm going to skip on down. That's dual forms. I'm going to skip on down to what's pertinent to this question is false duals and plurals. All right, and so, and let me see where I can skip on down. All right, so here's some common false plurals. So I will skip down to this. Of the singular masculine substantives or nouns that end in W that are derived from verbs, some of them are abstract. And we discussed this in other videos that we could probably touch on, again at a future time. But these singular substantives that end in W that are derived from verbs, they're abstract substantives and can therefore take a three-stroke determinative, giving the appearance as if they're plural, but they're not. So here's an example. The word Ya'u, which is adoration, that's an abstraction. It has the appearance of a plural because you see these three strokes here. It's the appearance of a plural, but however, it's singular. It's a masculine singular substantive derived from the verb ya'i, which means to adore. Okay, and without getting too much detail, this W, we say derived. It's a derivational morpheme, changing it from a verb over to another class of words that we call nouns or substantives. All right, so to adore becomes adoration. As another example, the word menu, which means that which remains, the deeds or the works, which is an abstraction, has the appearance of plural. However, it's a masculine singular substantive derived from the verb again, men, which means to be stable or to remain. So men becomes menu, and it looks plural, but it's not. All right. And I'm skip where we find it used. And so that should be enough examples. Here's a popular one. I'll read this one. The word inu, which means a tribute or production, something that was brought back from an expedition or what have you, has the appearance of plural. We see the three strokes here. But it's a masculine singular substantive that's derived from the verb ini, which means to bring. Okay, and so That's with that. Now, here's finally, mass substantives. Certain substantives written with the three-stroke determinatives are also mass nouns or mass substantives, as we call them, which are grammatically singular, where the contrast between singular and plural does not apply. Okay, so adjectives accompanying this form appear in the singular. That's how we can tell it is singular. And so, for example, wine, gold, and oil, these are called mass nouns because they most liquids are mass nouns. So, for example, sand on a beach is considered a mass noun because sand consists of a lot of different little pellets. Okay, so all liquids is considered mass nouns. So these will take on the appearance of being plural, but they're not. So that's one example, mass nouns. Then we have the collective nouns or collective substantives. All right, and so these collective substantives, which are grammatically singular and should not be confused with plurals. The system of agreement between collective substantives and demonstratives and adjectives associated with them are in the singular. So here's some examples. We have the word masha here, which means army. You see the three strokes there, but that's not plural. It's singular, and we can confirm this by the demonstrative that's associated with it. The word pen. Pen is a singular masculine demonstrative, and it has to agree in gender and number with the word masha. So lets us know that this word is masculine and singular as well, but it looks plural. And it's a collective because what a collective is, it treats a number of elements as one unit. So we know an army consists of a bunch of soldiers, but we say the army. All right, and on the feminine side, we have the word for herd of cattle, which is minminet, and it looks plural, but it's singular. And we have the demonstrative matching that, which is 10, which is a feminine singular demonstrative, letting us know that this word is feminine and singular. Okay, so hopefully that addresses the question Sean asked about the plural. If the three strokes doesn't always denote plurality, then how many other words are we transliterating or translating? And so really, it's people are vulnerable to do that if they're not aware of what I just covered just now. And so I think Sean J.D., you had something to add to that.
Let me do a screen share.
And again, while you screen share, so again, if anybody has questions, we're gonna open it up. As a matter of fact, Sean's question is the last question of the prior questions, and I'm gonna post a link. So those who want to come in, don't be shy, don't be scared. We're not gonna bite. You don't have to have your camera on, but you definitely have to have your mic and your sound and everything. All right. So I'll be posting that while Sanjeti is giving his addition to this, and let me know when you have it shared.
Yeah, I have it shared.
Okay, give me a second here. Okay, you're good to go.
Okay, so this supports the teaching that Wuja just gave from his book. Now, this is an earlier work from our great ancestor Ankh Ra, who is a teacher of Medew Netcher to both Asar Imhotep and myself personally, of course, years before his ancestorization. So in the book, Let the Ancestors Speak, and hopefully y'all have it, Removing the Veil of Mysticism from the Medew Netcher, page 79 through 80, where he discusses this very phenomenon regarding the triple strokes. So here he says this: nouns expressing abstract thought, although singular, are often written as plurals, and some of them are considered collectives. So here we have the first two examples here on page 79. So we have minute, heard. And then under that, you have mu. So you have the single sign of water written 3 times. So this goes back to what Wuja was explaining earlier. You have archaic forms when you're writing, you can actually write the word itself 3 times or the determinative semantic sign 3 times to denote not only plurality, but it can be written 3 times to denote abstract thought. Here, another example, this is on page 80. So the top word is irip. I believe you use that as an example. So for the determinative, beneath the wine, you have the triple strokes. This is a collective. This doesn't mean plural. In fact, even today's time, when we talk about wine, if you can say, can I have a glass of wine? Or you can say, hey, let me get some wine. But no one says wines with the S denoting English plural, because wine is always a collective. Then the next one now, you have KU. So after the biliteral at the top on the left, you have a sunburst. Beneath that, you have the arm, which is the long A sound, like ain't in African-American vernacular English, if you will. You could say ebonics if you want. And then you have the quell chick, which is the ooh. And then after that, we have the papyrus roll or the book. And then beneath you have the triple stroke. So the meaning here is splendor. Splendor, this is an abstract idea. Ooh. Beneath that, we have this example, usaru, power. It's not powers, but it's abstraction, power. It's the idea. Then beneath that, we have neferu. So instead of writing the word neferu, so you have the triliteral, nefer, and then typically after that, you'll have the phonetic complements of the horned viper on the right-hand side of one of these single signs. If you write only one of these signs, and then beneath that, you have the mouse sign. But you can drop that because we understand the triliteral, written 3 times. Again, that is an archaic form, but you can write the abbreviation 3 times for the abstraction. And then the more familiar term beneath that, we have hotepu. And now it doesn't mean pieces. Of course, no one actually says that, even in English, but it's abstract. It's an abstraction. The ooh. So I'm going to read the bottom here. Although at times the plural strokes are conspicuously absent, the collective can still be treated as though they are plurals. So this here is to support what Wuja was teaching, because we always want to make sure we have supports, and that's something that we regularly practice. And this comes from earlier work. So.
Brother Sanjetti, can you go to the previous slide?
Yep. There you go.
Okay. This isn't Brother Unc Me Ra's fault here, but there has to be some clarity to some things. So we got to remember that, and this is something that I'm going to be highlighting in the upcoming text, that when it comes to certain classifiers, they correspond to actual grammatical morphemes. And so in this instance, when you have min, net, heard, the heard plural part of it is a result of the doubling of the root. The T suffix is a suffix that is used for animals, as I can demonstrate in Chiluba, and as Mboli is also demonstrated in his 2010 work. Now, the mu there is an example of the single glyph used 3 times for the plural. But it is also represented and transliterated with the W, which is a plural. If you go to the next slide. Okay, so the 3 strokes is an actual plural stroke for the wine or the collect. It's more so the collective. So the three strokes represents the collective, a classifier for place, and the classifier for abstract. So in this word for splendor, we know it is the abstract because of the W suffix, which is given by the bird glyph. Because when it's abstract, it is often accompanied with either a T suffix or the bird suffix for W. Same thing with this power here. This W is a grammatical morpheme for the abstract. So it's absent the three strokes as the classifier, but it's still always going to be represented in the glyphs itself with the actual grammatical morpheme that is pronunciated. And so at Neferu, this is actually proof of the three strokes concept to be used as the abstract, because they write it here. And so, as you said, it's not perfections, it's not beauties, it's beauty, perfection, the abstract, from the verb Nefer, to be beautiful, to be good, etc. And so that abstract nominalizes it. And so it's the same thing with this piece. The W is a part of the root, part of the word itself. It is a suffix of the abstract. And so you'll know, for example, that plural stroke is part of the, that it is represented often with suffixes or prefixes of the abstract. For example, there's different abstract prefixes and suffixes in the Egyptian language. So there's the M prefix, like in Ma'at. There's the set, ST or S.T for place. There's also nu, as in NW. So like in that one example that Brother Ujawu was showing, and it showed the nu glyph after it, that is the grammatical suffix for the abstract. And then you see the classifier reinforcement of the abstract. So nu is another abstract suffix. And then you also have the T suffix, but there's also a T collective. And so it gets kind of confusing, but this is where the comparative method comes into play and can verify, which is being which if one is confused by the hieroglyphs itself. But it just takes some training.
Man, you all kind of went in. I was trying to.
Y'all went too deep. The answer no one really knows to his answer in terms of how many words are we mistranslating. It's not that we're necessarily mistranslating, but some people are mistranslating.
Yeah.
So we don't know who those people are and how many of the words they're mistranslating.
Yeah.
Versus, the dictionaries and all this. That's the simple answer. Y'all went into grammatical, psychological.
Yeah, because
I think it's necessary. I mean, sometimes, my bad, I mean to cut you out, Wujao. But yeah, I mean, you know how we do. We give the answer, and then we give some in-depthness to it, so that you get the greater context. Because sometimes when we just give the answer, like to someone who may not know, if they don't understand why that's the answer, then they could possibly repeat the same question but just reword it. So to the audience, this is why we give this type of details. So we'll give you the answer to the question, and then we'll give you the details so you understand what's the process to get to that answer.
Yeah, I just wanted to because what Sean asked was really a statement of a problem, and so we can't leave people hanging. So we want to make sure we give a little bit of a solution. So Asar is correct. We don't really know the answer to his statement, but to prevent that, that's why we're giving this information, to prevent people from mistranslating and all that good stuff. So, and like I said, we can we've actually done videos on this before. You know, the difference between collective and mass nouns, because a lot of scholars about the language in the past, they don't separate mass from collective. They just they lump mass nouns within the collective nouns. But moving forward, it's not really wise to do that because there's distinctions that could be made within the language between the two. And so this is why I make sure we continue to make the distinction between mass. Like, for example, butter, the English word butter. You know, mass nouns, you know that they're mass because we have to have what's called a quantifier in front of them. So if I say, give me, like, for example, I say, give me a stick of butter. You know, I don't say, give me butters. I say, give me a glass of wine. So glass and a stick are quantifiers because they are mass nouns. You know, give me a handful of sand. You know, a handful would qualify as a quantifier. So there's distinctions even within Ronnie Kemet to where we can detect that difference between, you know, a collective in and of itself. So, you know, we can get more in depth with it, but, you know, don't want to rock people's brains for tonight with that. So hopefully that's suffice for you, Brother Sean. And that was the last question on the previous question. So now I've posted the link. So hopefully we have some people. We only got one person. You mean to tell me out of everybody that's in the chat, we only have one person brave enough to come in? You know, not brave enough.
There's already some questions in the chat.
Yeah, there's some questions in the chat.
All right, so we're gonna address the person who came in here first because, you know, that's what, you know, takes some guts to come in here. No. You know, listen, you all come in. Like I said, you don't have to have your camera on, but we're not going to bite. You know, we want the interaction, but we will read the questions in the chat as well. But as a priority, we're going to give the floor to those who come in here first. All right. So the floor is open. Let me see. Who is this? Yeah. And when you speak for the first time, just, you know, let us know where you hail from, your name and where you hail from. That's all we need. And then you can ask your question or give a comment. So if you can hear me, you got to unmute yourself, or you're not muted. So hopefully your audio is working. Let me make sure that
Marquise, I guess it looks like Marquise McClendon.
Yeah.
You wanted to say something?
Yeah, his audio doesn't seem to be working.
Yeah, if you having a problem, you know, we always go to the bootleg way, just leave and come right back. But if you can hear me, okay, yeah, he left out. So all right, so let's go to the chat questions. Let me scroll back up on the chat. Matter of fact, let me switch my screen over a bit. Let's see, where are these questions here? All right, so I'm gonna scroll up. Let's see, what was the first? Did y'all see the first question? Okay, I think I see the first one, which is
I've seen one from Lessa Darcy. Is that the next one or?
Scrolling up. Okay, I see that somebody. I'm gonna read this comment. Somebody, Donnie C made a comment. He said that I visited and flown over Kemet and sailed down the Nile, and he said that most is desert. There's only a narrow band of black land or fertile soil, and so he's saying that the black land as a meaning doesn't make sense from that viewpoint. You know, this is a comment. But the first question I actually see is from Rock Solid Keys, if I'm pronouncing that right. You see that question? So it says, I'll just read it. Basic question. Anyone can answer. How was it that we determined phonological sounds based on inscriptions of Medew or any of the derivatives? Thank you.
I can answer that one.
All right.
Because I kind of touched on that last night, so I'll just share these two slides that from our presentation last night.
All right. And brother Marquise, just real quick, if you want to test your mic. Nah, I can't hear you.
Uh,
Yeah, just real quick, brother Marquise, I posted the number as well. So unless you wanted to share something on your screen, but you can call in too. So use your cell phone and call. Look at the link and call in. All you gotta do is type in the meeting ID number. All right, so try it that way. All right, as a backup. Okay,
and
sorry.
also, hold on. You can also, before you do that, you uh, if you expand the window that you're looking, that you can see all this stuff in, so that it's big. I don't know if you're on a computer or on your phone.
Look like you're on this phone.
But if you see where you mute your mic, there's an arrow next to it, and some options should come up for you to select your microphone. So on my screen, I'm on my computer. So when I expand using the square on the right hand side of it, my mute button is at the bottom left hand side. And so when I click my mouse there, yeah, so if you're able to mute it, there should be an arrow next to it that you can click, and there should be an option to select a microphone. And if it recognizes any of your microphones, it should have one of those present there, and you should be able to select it.
Yeah, I could see him muting and unmuting himself, but it's just not the audio. So
if you're on your phone, shake your head up and down.
Yeah, he's on his phone.
I see. So I don't know how it is on the phone. Yeah, so you might want to call in.
Yeah, so I posted the number, and just type in the meeting ID. You should be good. All right, but sorry. Let me know when you're sharing.
Okay.
And again, I posted a link, so it's open. You all, just if you have questions, we're gonna read the ones that's typed in. You could type it. I would prefer the vocal, voice interaction, but we'll read them from the chat as well. We're not going to discriminate. All right, so I see you. So you good to go, Sharon? Sorry.
Okay, so in 1822, it was Champollion who was able to decipher the hieroglyphs. And part of the process for deciphering the hieroglyphs came as a result of examining the Coptic, the Rosetta Stone that had the Coptic, Demotic, and the Greek on it. So it was the same words and the same text written in 3 different scripts. And so when he looked at a word for Ptolemy, and he saw that they was in the cartouche in the Coptic language, he was able to, or was it Demotic or hieroglyphs on the Rosetta Stone? It was Demotic, right?
It was.
Yeah, it was glyphs. The formal, I like to call formal Netcher.
Yeah,
that people call hieroglyphs in the inscription. Then it was Demotic.
All right, so there wasn't Coptic on it. So what he recognized is that in the Shenu of the hieroglyphic script, that it contained a word for Ptolemy, which he could read in the Greek. And so the Greek version of the word also had a Shenu, or a circle around it. And so it was this mapping of the Greek words, which he recognized with certain sounds in the hieroglyph, that started the process of decipherment. Well, since Champollion's decipherment in 1822, dozens and dozens of researchers have, looked at other texts and was able to fully, map out roughly the sounds associated with the monoliterals, the biliterals, and the triliteral glyphs. And so part of that process of being able to map certain sounds, comes from this process that I'm about to read right now. So this list of processes that you see on your screen now comes from a linguist and Egyptologist by the name of Frank Camerzel, and he wrote a text on the phonology of a dead language. And don't get that confused with there's a book by the same name, but they're part of the same research team that is focused on recovering the sounds of ancient Egyptian. But so he has an article of it, addressing certain issues. So these are the processes he argues are necessary for the recovery of ancient Egyptian sounds in the hieroglyphic script. So the first one is examining the transcription of Egyptian words in other ancient writing systems. So just like how the Egyptian, technically it's a Greek name, but the Greek name Ptolemy was written in the hieroglyphic script. So by knowing, the Greek word, and it's found in the hieroglyphic script, as in the case of the pharaoh Ptolemy, they were able to map certain of those sounds based on the Greek. And so the second line is the reverse. So by the examination of transcriptions of foreign words in hieroglyphic and the other hieratic script. Actually, that was what I said was this line here, but not the reverse. But there's plenty of words that the Greeks have borrowed from the Egyptians that you can look in the Greek script and see, and map them to words in the ancient Egyptian language. But the formal example that I gave was actually an example of the second line that I'm talking about now. Foreign words in the hieroglyphic script. And so, then you can read the rest, the Coptic tradition, etymological evidence, that means historical comparative linguistics, phonotactic regularities, typological considerations, synchronic and diachronic variation of written forms, rhymes and puns, and the consonantal phonemes of Old Egyptian and pre-Old Egyptian, which is, his examination based on the etymological evidence. So the example that I gave in the discussion I had last night was with this word you find in the Old and Middle Kingdom, Nesut Biti, which is a word for king, and sometimes you'll see it written as the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, or sometimes he of the reed and the bead. But, I just translated it simply as king. The phrase together is king. And so in the New Kingdom, you have some text written in the cuneiform from the Sumerian language, but the writing script was adopted by the Akkadians, which are a Semitic-speaking group. And so in their correspondences with the Egyptians, for example, when addressing the king, they called him Insibia or Insibia. And this lets us know, and verifies a few things. First, I have this T suffix, this T suffix here highlighted in blue in both of these words. It's actually a suffix in both of these words. And so by the New Kingdom, the T was dropped in the pronunciations, but it was kept in the writings. Just like how we keep the K in the word knight, as in knight in shining armor, or knife. And so we don't say knife, or we don't say knight. It's silent. And it's not even really it's silent, it's disappeared. But orthographically, we still keep it in the writing. So it's the same thing here with the T sounds. And so this W behind Su often turns into I, especially, between vowels and things sometimes. So, this and I or the J, interchange in Egyptian. And so what is reaffirmed is that the N in Nesu is maintained in this map. So the Akkadian confirms that there's an N, and then it also confirms that there's an S. And that because this glyph here is BI or BJ for B, and sometimes written as bit. And so it confirms, again, the B sound and the Y or I sound. And so, I sometimes turns into Y in front of A. So the Akkadian, reaffirms again some of the phonetic values of some of these glyphs. So we can come backdoor like I did here. So this glyph here is a biliteral. It holds a consonant value of S and W. And so in the Collagen language, which is a Nilotic language of Kenya, this glyph here is interpreted as a sedge plant. But, Collagen actually, and in my text, Nesubiti, king in ancient Egyptian, I also give Chiluba examples, which also reaffirms this pronunciation. And so you can see the words for the type of grass. And the sedge plant is a type of plant that grows in marshy waters. And so it's a general word you find in these different variations for suswu, grass, suswoot, grass, susyut. And so just like in ancient Egyptian, the W and the Y interchange, or I interchange. So in Collagen, you had the same thing. We see, and I give plenty of examples in my 2016 text. So a type of palm assigned to the botanical names Phoenix reclinata and Hafane thebaica. Then you have Sa'it, then Sawit, a kind of grass. Sawusuk, grass that grows in swampy areas, marsh. Suswheat, grass. And so this would actually be closest probably to the ancient pronunciation, Sawit or Sawi. The eat is a suffix in this language. And so by examining, and of course, this is not an isolated word. I've compared dozens upon dozens of Collagen words with ancient Egyptian. And so we see this consistency where ancient Egyptian has Z or S, Collagen has S. Same thing in Chilub or Bantu. And so when you have this Akkadian form here with the S confirms, and you'll see other variations of this Nesubiti hieroglyph that you see here, where it'll have the actual N glyph, the N water glyph for Nesut. And so, I hope this, helps to answer the question, for in terms of how do we know what the sound values are for the Netcher. That's one of the aspects that we know is by foreign words, and then by historical comparative linguistics when we compare Egyptian with other African words for the words that you find in the Netcher. And so it goes back to that emphasis of mine at the beginning of our conversation when we're talking about patterns, repetition, recursion, in the comparisons of the script. This is what reinforces the sound values. So we're not blind as to what, the vast majority of the sounds. It's only really like two of them that is, in debate. And that is the vulture glyph that we transliterate capital A, and then the hand glyph that we transliterate lowercase a. And so some say it's D, and Boli says it's H, Bilolo says it's A. One text I've seen is a G, and for me it corresponds to a whole bunch of different sounds, including K. So it really just depends. But it's really those two glyphs that are under consideration. All the other ones really ain't up for that much of a debate. So that ends without my presentation.
All right. So the brother responded and said, "Much thanks." He said that was a major contention he had with the Egyptological discipline. In terms of that. But let me just the one thing I want to add to that though is one, all the issues about whether the language has been deciphered. We wrote a text in 2016 by the Sesh Netcher, addressing that debate topic of whether or not the hieroglyphic writing system has been deciphered or not. And in there, we kind of touch on a couple of these issues. So definitely check that out. But what I want to add to that is that not that this brother who's asking the question is of this mind, but sometimes people will take the lack of historical accuracy in pronunciation. They'll take that to mean that we don't know what the words mean. And so we have to be clear and separate those two things. We don't have to be able to pronounce words historically accurate to know what they mean. All right. And I can't stress that more. All right. So we have to make sure that those are two separate issues. All right. And a lot of people will tend to blur that together and say, well, if you all don't know exactly how it was pronounced, then that means how you know what the words mean and this and that. So those are two separate things. All right. Semantics and then the phonology of the pronunciations and so on and so forth. Okay. So we got to make sure that that's clear. All right. So next question. I think we have some people in the chat now and on the panel. So, I want to open the mic up to you all first, and then we'll continue to read some. I saw a couple more questions in the chat. But the floor is open. If you want to.
And even if you don't have a question, just tell us what your overall thoughts of the book were. What were your favorite parts? What was confusing? Whatever. Just, you give some commentary on the text.
Yeah. Yeah, get some commentary, some feedback, some anything.
Mm-hmm.
And don't all unmute yourself at the same time. I know Sean's probably afraid to talk because he hogged all the questions. But Sean, if you got any more feedback, we have Cesaro Okeki, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Hotep. If now I'm not sure if you're able to speak because you're not muted, but for some reason we're not hearing. So Sean, maybe unmute yourself and speak. Make sure that everything is working fine. Okay, I'm not sure, man. Maybe Asar Motep's gremlins that don't like his channel creeped on over here with Asar Motep. They kind of follow him around. Sean, if you're there, unmute yourself and you could say a few words. Make sure. Oh, I can hear you now. Whoever that was.
This is the brother Shigaro. I'm down here in Jacksonville, Florida. Just coming in late. I'm just listening in.
Okay, all right. Well, welcome. Greetings to you and welcome. And if you tuned in late, you're definitely gonna have to view this as in an archive. Let me ask you: Do you have a copy of the book?
No, I haven't got a copy of the book yet.
Okay. Okay. All right. So when you do, we're always looking for feedback or questions or even if you find something that you feel that you may disagree on, we look forward to your feedback. All right. So make sure you get a copy and reach out. All right. Definitely. So, but if you're listening in now, you got any comments on what you've heard so far?
No, it's just interesting because I've been going back and forth between did they know if they were black or did they address themselves as black? Because I was researching in a different strain of West Africa. There's in West Africa they called themselves the Western Sudan, all the way back to the Arab time. Wondering how long have people known they were black or addressed themselves as black. So I'm interested in learning more, eventually getting the book. I know this position is that it was a toponym or a geographic term.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just listening in.
Okay. Well, no problem. So welcome. You could continue listening.
Let me maybe I can at least begin in the response, and then I can we can pass it. So I think the question is, did they? You said they know, so I'm assuming we're talking about Egyptians here. Did they know that they were black? Was that part of your question?
I was just wondering, as far as the term Sudan, because I know that Sudan literally means in Arabic black people. So I was just interested in hearing a counterpoint that, in this perspective, that Kemet means it's a toponym. And I've been following the side work. He's been saying this for a long time, so I think
Okay.
if this point is true, but I'm in the position it is true.
Okay.
Listening.
All right. So I'll give an introductory response, and then I'll pass it. So with the Arabic terminology, Sudan. So that was given by Arabs. The people in the area did not call themselves Sudan or Sudanese, if you will. All right. Or an Al Sudan. So that's one. So that is an outside designation. Same thing with black. No one in Africa was calling themselves BLACK. And then when it comes to, Kemet, put it this way, if we just go off of the features of African people, all the variations that may characterize as African people differently. Well, if they're all black, if you will, quote unquote, then why would they need to distinguish themselves from people who are quote unquote white? Like, the question is, did they have a color distinction between people in regards to like defining whole groups by color? Because see, today we have what's called a racial consciousness. Did the ancient Egyptians have a racial consciousness? That'll be the important question. Did they define themselves like that? Because see, today we're defining ourselves based on how we respond to racism. So now you have to go to another step. Did the ancient Egyptians respond to racism and white supremacy? Actually, the answer is no. So why would they have to define themselves as black as in response to, say, white? Of course, they use the color black in the artwork to represent certain things, but not as a race of an entire race of people. Because we look at the artwork, most of the men are actually a red color in the artwork. It doesn't mean that their skin color was red. That's simply the color that they used when they painted in the artwork. And then with the black, the painting of black, that represents someone who's an ancestor or even a deity in the duat, which might call the spirit realm, if you will. But the majority of Egyptians, especially the men, are painted red. But it's color symbolism, because later on, even the Ptolemies were colored in a red hue. And we know that Greeks are not red in their color. They're what you might call today a European white person. So this would be evidence that this is color symbolism. Now, am I answering your question, brother?
I'm sure.
I'll put myself on mute. Yeah, you are.
Okay, all right. I'll make sure you're good. All right, I'll pass it on.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I just want to. Well, the only thing I add to that is one, and we always have to make this disclaimer is that when well, first of all, I'm surprised nobody asked the final outcome of what does Kemet mean, but we defined it inside the text, inside the book. But Kemet is a designation. One is a toponym, it's a location, and the meaning behind it is referring to a riparian zone. So if you are not familiar with what a riparian zone is, I definitely suggest that you Google it, riparian zone, and you're just gonna have a eureka moment because it's gonna be a land that has access to a body of water or a river, and the land that's around that, and the land that has access to that water from that river, basically. And so when we refer to the Arab Republic of Egypt, as it's called today, most people in the communities, our communities, conscious community, will refer to it as the Nile Valley civilization. And we got to realize when we say Nile Valley civilization, the Nile is the river. So we're in essence saying the river valley civilization, the river civilization, the riparian zone. So unbeknownst to us, we've been saying it all along. The riparian civilization, the Nile Valley civilization. They're synonymous. All right. So make sure you all look that up. But one thing I would like to add, though, is because we're defining it in its proper context, what we are not saying is that the ancient Egyptians themselves were not what we would call black people today. So under our modern social constructs, we would absolutely refer to the ancient Egyptians as black people. Okay, so I don't want that to be confusing to people. It's just that they had no modern our modern constructs. We have to be careful not to retroactively fit it, in the past. They had no reason to do that as what we do today in terms of that's concerned. That's all I wanted to kind of add to that response. But that was pretty much, that covered everything. So hopefully, brother, that's satisfactory to you. And we can get more and more, but like I said, you probably should check out the text, and then you'll probably be see what we mean and where we're going.
And also when you read, say, the text in the text from ancient Kemetic text, such as the hymn to the Atun, it is reckoned like the various skins or skin colors of people are recognized in that hymn. So remember, people have eyes, so we can, people can distinguish, what people are looking like, the color of skins, etc. And of course, throughout all of human history or human existence, humans can recognize the skin color of a person. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that they define that person's existence, their standard of human worth based on that. So that's what we're saying.
Yeah, that's good. The qualifiers of inclusion and exclusion for identity was not based on skin color in history in the ancient times as it is today. So hopefully everybody can get that and understand that. So I see we have another person on the line. Did you have just state your name and where you're hailing from, and then if you have a question, the floor is yours.
To Michael Knight, if you have a question, comment, concern on the topic or anything.
Oh, it's a brother Kadeem. All right. I'm not sure. Your mic is muted, so if you can hear us, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just came in to listen, but I do have one question that I did ask in the chat. Was I saw a topic that said that the Rosetta Stone unlocked the hieroglyphics. So I was wondering what y'all think about that.
Okay. So again, I guess I shouldn't call it a shameless plug, but to plug the book that we've produced or published a few years back. Has the Egyptian writing system been deciphered? Rebuttal to Professor Walter Williams. We discuss about the whole decipherment and the methods and so on and so forth. And to answer your question, the Rosetta Stone well, first of all, just quickly, you have to understand that in the late 1700s and the early 1800s, there was a race to uncover the secrets that were believed to be found in ancient Egypt. And so you have to understand that the Europeans, the different European communities, they were coming out of a Renaissance, and they were reevaluating their classical text of the Romans and the Greeks. And they found that the Greeks were giving a lot of props to ancient Egypt. And so that over time brought about the feeling of, wanting to find out what's going on in Egypt. What's the secrets? These glyphs must hold the keys to the secrets of the universe, the keys to power and all of this. So it started a race between Britain or the United Kingdom and France. And so, just during the wars and everything with Napoleon and everything in the late 1700s. And so there was a race, really no different than how the United States and the Soviet Russia were racing in the 1960s to see who could get on the moon first. So these two major countries back then were racing to see who can uncover or discover the secrets, of ancient Egypt. And so then the race was on. So anyway, bringing that up to the decipherment. So you had a few people involved with that entire process, but they give credit to Champollion and the Rosetta Stone. So the Rosetta Stone was a very crucial and critical element. Basically any interlineary text, but the Rosetta Stone is the most popular that people talk about. But you also have the Canopus Stone that came later that reaffirmed and confirmed what was preliminarily brought out from the Rosetta Stone and Champollion. Okay, so this is how it was confirmed. So as science does, it postulates and tests and experiment and try to eliminate chance and all that kind of stuff. So the Canopus Stone provided that, that extra text and things to verify some things before. So it's the Rosetta Stone and the other stone, and we talk about that. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The Canopus Stone was as important, and a lot of people sleep on that. So, to answer your question, the Rosetta Stone, yes, the Rosetta Stone was very critical. Matter of fact, any interlinear text where you have the Egyptian writing system, which was the formal hieroglyphs, you had the Greek, which was understood back then already, and then you had the Demotic text, all in one text that were interlinear. They were exchanged, providing the same content, and so that was key, and that's a jewel for any decipherment project. That's like a decipherer's heaven, So the answer is yes, but also you cannot forget the other stone that was found similar to the Rosetta Stone, which is the Canopus Stone. And make sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. So you all can look that up. Matter of fact, just get our book. Yeah, it's the Canopus Stela. Discovered in 1886. All right, so just want to make sure everyone's aware of that.
Okay, yeah, I never heard of the Canopus Stone, so now it makes sense now.
You say you have or haven't?
Haven't.
Okay.
I never heard nobody talk about the Canopus Stone. Right.
It's the slept on stone. So we got to make sure that we bring that to people's attention, because it's that stone that allowed the scholars back then to check and verify the works prior to and leading up to Champollion. Okay, like I said, Champollion is the popular name that everybody knows, but there was a line of people that were involved in that decipherment process. It took years for that to happen. All right. Coptic was also used and very instrumental in the process. But so hopefully that addresses your question. And so, any other questions? So I have the chat shared on the screen. So I'm looking for questions, and I don't see any more. So I guess this means either people are understanding the text, and that's good, or I don't know what else to.
I saw a question. I think you're above. You might be reading above me, but I did see a question from, I think it's Leslie Darcy, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Oh, Lisa. Her name, Lisa.
Lisa. Okay. My apologies. Did ask a question at 9:21.
Okay, let me scroll back. So you said she had a question earlier.
Yeah.
See if I can scroll back. Yeah, so she corrected the name. Oh, right here. Okay, so she is this one you're talking about? She says, what about the word dua'u? Isn't that connected? Isn't that connected to say? Yeah, maybe she can clarify the question.
I created a slide to answer the question. But
okay.
So let me do a screen share real quick.
All right. Just let me know when you got it shared. Now, post it up.
Okay, it's shared.
Okay, let me get it over there. All right, there you are.
Okay, so to address that question the best way I can, if I'm understanding it correctly. So here, I created this slide real fast for this. So words transliterated as dua'u. So, if you go to a concise dictionary Middle Egyptian, as seen at the bottom, those are the reference numbers. So page 310, item 4, and page 310, item 8. So the first two, so you go back up, you see the Netcher hieroglyphic terms. The first two is referenced from 310, item 4, that's the first one, and then item 8 is the second one. So, so the first one, dua'u, meaning morning, dawn or morning. And as we can see, now this is a noun referring to a person, place, thing, or it could be an abstraction as well. So that's that dua'u, that u there that we discussed earlier. So again, this is not a plural. The second item, beneath that, you see the star, and you see a man praising, kneeling man praising. So this is actually a verb. So dua meaning to praise or to worship. Sometimes in the community, when a person wants to give you praise, and I'm talking about today, and they want to give you thanks, instead of saying thank you, they'll say dua as a way to say thank you or showing gratitude. Now, beneath that is dua'u. Now, this is a noun here. So you have a noun derived from a verb. So praises or hymns. For example, if you go to some text from the Temple of Hibis in Kemet, you have what's called the hymns to Amun-Ra. So one of those is what's called the Creator hymn, and it's Dua Ea Sheta in Amun-Ra. It translates as the great secret hymn to Amun-Ra, and which is line 1. So that's a reference from the text. Now this is found pretty much all over the place, but that's just one example. So the first example at the top, we see that dawn or morning is referring to a time period. So this is an abstraction. The u is referred to abstraction. However, but the last one at the very bottom a noun derived from a verb, but this is in the plural. Dua'u is different. So you see two different usage of the u here, and it which reinforces the earlier teaching. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that's
right.
Hopefully.
I'll just keep that up for a second in case anybody wants to take notes.
Okay, yeah. While we show the move forward, if any question that's answered or response and you need clarification more, just feel free to have a follow up for those listening. But we're not gonna be too long. It's 10:13 now, so we're gonna at maximum we're gonna close out at 10:30. So 15 minutes more. We'll give everybody the opportunity to give us some feedback or some questions and whatnot. All right, so reading some more questions. Lisa also has another question. Let's see, where did it go? I think it scrolled up. But she asked, basically, didn't they paint the men a darker shade than the women a lighter color for some reason? And I'm just going to take a quick stab at that real fast. That the answer is yes. The adult men and the artwork all throughout Kemet, all throughout its entire history, was done in a reddish brown pigment. Some people may refer to it as a tawny brown or red, but it's a reddish brown pigment. And we could show from dynasty to dynasty. We can show it consistent. It was a scribal standard that was done throughout its entire history. And the women were in general painted with a yellowish pigment. All right, and the idea behind that is that women in those times were the adult functions and tasks and jobs that women held and did were indoors, and so they basically had reign and control over the indoor functions of the estate and so on and so forth. And that's like one of the theories or explanations behind that, is that women were differentiated from the men who had outdoor jobs and took on those responsibilities. All right, so we would probably have to explore that more, but that's the running understanding of why there's a difference, or one of the reasons why. It could be a couple of reasons. It may be layered. Sometimes we look for one static reason, but come find out, especially in artwork, this is something that we discussed before. There's a difference between aspective art and perspective art, where they're doing and showing more than one thing simultaneously, and it's really prominent in the positions of figures, but it's also in the artwork all in it of itself, including the colors, the color schemes and things like that. All right, so we have to be open for all of that information. So that's my take on a piece on that. All right, like we know, like for just a little quick add on, we know that all the women, we know that all the women in ancient Egypt were not yellow. And in fact, in some texts, in some papyri, in funerary scenes, people are painted white. And so we have to acknowledge and embrace the symbolisms of these different colors as well. So all of that comes into the mix, and so we can't microwave and just assume, okay, they're depicting real life depictions. Because I can show you a statue of a person who's nice and slim and trim, but then show you another depiction where they look like they definitely had too many hamburgers. As well, and it's the same person. We could show King Mentuhotep, where has the reddish brown pigment, and then we could show him very, very dark to black. We have Ahmos Nefertari, same way. She's golden color on a papyrus, but then carved in stone, she's jet black. All right, so we have to keep that all in mind. I don't see any other questions, and hopefully we're doing our job and we're on it. and maybe some questions will come later as people digest more of the book or get the book and everything. So Sanjay, if you want to talk a little bit more about, I think this is good to bring up and kind of close out on, because that's the question, as far as the blackness. And so I'll just preference it by we definitely have to be aware of the differences between ethnicity, nationality, race, and all these modern concepts we have right now. We have to understand the distinctions and differences between those concepts. Ethnicity, your race, and your nationality, all those kinds of things. And we can't, what we shouldn't do is to retroactively or retrofit it back into ancient times, and everything. So I think that'll lead into Sanjay, if you want to share more information about the remix. But hold on, before you do that, there's one more question. Chavis asks, what is the semantic meaning behind he says Knest, Kash, and Nehisi? So I don't know if let's tackle that before you go in on the remage. So that's his question. Matter of fact, let me put that on the screen real quick here. Okay, so the brother Chavis asks the question, what is the semantic meaning behind Knest, Kash, and Nehisi? Now, I just want to caution people. See, because I get inbox all the time where people will show a transliteration and ask me what the word means. But I do understand what the words he's referring to, but we have to be cautious with that, because like I mentioned earlier, a lot of words that are transliterated the exact same, but they could be totally different words. So you can give one answer for one word and the person's talking about another one. But these words he's asking about are pretty much, we understand what those are. So Kash and Nehisi, just real quick, the semantic meaning behind it, that's what he's asking for. But let me just give a reference of what they refer to. Kash refers to what people will call the kingdom of Kush in Sudan, modern day Sudan, as well as Nehisi. Nehisi is the Egyptian word that people like to translate as Nubians. Now, I stay away from it, and I caution other people to do so as well, because it becomes a problem, with the word Nubia, because Nub or Nubit or Nubet were places within Kemet, and Nehisi is talking about a place that's south of Kemet's most southern border. And so it becomes confusing when you get back into the text and you're reading about it, and you may be lost in your mind, in your geography. So I caution against using the word Nubia for that place and Nubians for the people. We should refer to them as what the Egyptians called them, which was the place was Ata Nehesi, and the people Nehesiu. And as easy as we could say Nubian and Nubia, we can say Nehesi and Nehesiu and Ta Nehesi. They're not hard to pronounce. All right. Now, what they mean, I think we have to do some more research on that, but I don't know if Asar or Sanjay, if you all have done any research. I know we brought this up a few years back as far as the word Nehisi, and the Nehisi bird, the Neh bird that's used for it and things like that. But I'm not sure if we've gone any further with that. But anybody any comments on that?
I mean, I guess we can elaborate on that next time. We did discuss it like years ago, and I mean, there's still ongoing research with it. So I don't know if Asar wants to, but perhaps we can, in the next session, question and answer, we can touch on that.
Okay, yeah. So Chavis, we're gonna table that, because actually, that's not even a part of this text or this topic actually for us tonight. But that's a good question. We've talked about it a few years back, so maybe we can have a session where we could bring that back up. So yeah, appreciate the question though. So yeah, we're gonna. All right, so now see what happens is when we get close out, now people want to post the questions last minute. So we have one more question, and this is gonna be the last question, because brother Sanjay gonna close us out. We have from Sarah Jahudi. The question is, did the Remich speak in detail about their initiation system for the Sesh in training?
No.
All right, so that was straight and raw to the point. No. The answer is no.
All right.
Yeah, so now like I said, we could now Sarah.
There's answers. I mean, there's things we find, but in detail, no. But again, we can table that one.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, we can bring these things up because that's a good question. All these are good questions, but we got to understand that our topic is the publication, and it's the meaning of the place name Kemet and everything that's in the book. So although that's a good question, it's really outside the topic for us tonight. All right, so I don't want to make it seem like we're brushing anybody off. But yeah, so Sanjetti, you can close us out, and then we'll just give some final closing words, and we'll finish for tonight. So if you're sharing something, let me know.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to it now. Let's share. Wait for this to prompt. All right. Go ahead. I'm in.
Okay. Give me a second. Let me get you shared up over here. All right. So there you go.
Okay. I was waiting for the screen to show up on my end. But can everyone else see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, yeah, okay. So this chart pulled from the book, but it's not in exact order as it is in the book. I just use these ones just to relate a point. So we know that the term remech is used way more frequently than the term commit to you. Now, of course, the discussion of commit to you, that's something that Asar can get into, or he has already explained in the text. However, I took it upon myself to search to see, okay, which term is used more frequently? So that was the question. Which word is used frequently? The word remech or commit to you in the text? Of course, we're not reading all of the text because, it's extremely time consuming, and I'm not sure if we wouldn't be able to get through all of them. So I went through the pyramid texts and I counted how many times each word was used. Now, the term commit to you, regardless of its meaning, is used one time. But the word remech is used over 70 times. And that's in the pyramid text. And then I go to Middle Kingdom text. And so we have the classical text, such as the story of the shipwrecked sailor, the story of Sinuhe, etc. And I went through those. There's the classical texts. And I found remech used abundantly. So if we go up to the top here, the top row, well, let's look at the left column. So that's the word, the form of the word remech in the given text. And then in the middle, you have the usage in the text, the sentences, and then you have the textual source on the right. So let's look at the top row. So on the left, you have remech. Now, of course, we only see the mouse sign, tether rope, and the triple stroke in a slanted form. And the M is not written. So the owl that is usually used to denote the M sound is not there. So this is an abbreviated form. So this is one of the forms remech, and the text is written in a vertical fashion, meaning top to bottom. And it goes to the second one down is written in a vertical fashion, top to bottom. And then the last one at the bottom is written from right to left horizontally. So now usage in the text, top one. So translated as the Netcher's contentment will descend, the face of the people will brighten, and the Netcher's heart will become aroused. So the word for people there is Ramesh, and I have Ramesh highlighted there. And that comes from the parent text of Pepe 5:23. And then we have the next row down. So I'll just read that in the transliteration, and understand that when you're reading transliteration, these are approximations. These are not exact sounds. So we have Sejem Irek Hatia, Miyek Nefer, Dejem in Ramech. Translation. So listen, high official, says, look, it is good for people to listen. So here we see this is a general word for people. We go over here. This is the story of the shipwrecked sailor, episode 16, columns 181 through 182. Well, let me move my screen around. All right, last one here. So we see Ramech read from right to left, and we see the man, which is Garter Code A1. We see the woman, Garter Code B1, and then we have the triple strokes beneath. Transliteration. Yeah, ready in Chati, Nesitu, Naif in Kurdu, Imket Arkif, Seker Ramech, Beatsin Im Eat Heref. Translation. So the Chati had his boys summoned after he came to understand the manner of people, the nature being what had come upon him. So this comes from the instructions of Kagemi's father. Conclusion from the conclusion section, column 2, lines 3 through 4. So again, the word for people is Ramech. So when we get here, this is a general term for people. And usually a group of people will call themselves the people. This is very common. So in this slide here, we have at the top the meta-Netcher form of Ramech ni Kemet. So the people of Kemet, transliteration beneath that. And then you have the Coptic form, which is Remen Kime. Remen Kime. And it becomes easier if you understand the Greek alphabet, you can pretty much read anything written in Coptic, as long as you learn the 6 to 7 other signs adopted from the Demotic form or Sesh Nishat signs adopted in the Coptic, then you can read anything. So this is very significant, because this is what's called the Berlin Papyrus 10499. That's a catalog number. And this is the actual document. Of course, it's only showing part of it, but I think it's very important to show primary documentations here. So this is to tell Sinuhe, and Sinuhe, he was a warrior. And keep that in mind. This is lines 32 through 34, and this is one of the classical texts of Middle Egyptian. So let's go through transliteration and translation. So line 32, Jed Inef, In Rek Inef, Kedi, Sejem Inef, Shasai, Metin We, Ramech Kemet, In Tu, Im Hineef. So for those who have taken some of the classes or know meta-Netcher, we know that the Jed NF, the N it denotes a completed action. So Jed means to say. So he said, and we know that F is a suffix pronoun for he, and that is third person. So he said this because he had learned of my character. So had learned, we know that's rec NF. It should say he, yes, so he had learned. He had learned. So rec NF, he had learned. So it's completed. And then my character, which is ked, ked-e, my character. And that, again, you have the suffix pronoun e. Line 33. So Sejem NF, So that's he had heard. And then Shasa'i, excellence my or my excellence. Then we have met in and we. Now we know the we, that's a dependent pronoun, or more accurately labeled an object pronoun. So, and then it's Remech Kemet. So usually translated as Egyptians. So this is the attestation of the Egyptians defining themselves as Remech Kemet here. And completing and continuing the translation, who were there together with him, having witnessed me. Now, the witness to me, that would be the met in we, which you find at the beginning of the sentence. So at the bottom here, this is the actual form that's in the text. Now, the text is written in the hieratic form, or what we may call Sesh Mejat or Seshni Mejat, which is book writing, and that's the cursive form. But when you transcribe it into formal hieroglyphs, if you will, this is what you will find. And we know that Remech Kemet, for those who understand the genitive form. The genitive, that's the relationship between two nouns. So this is a direct genitive, meaning there's no preposition between. At least it's not written between. So Remech ni Kemet, if you were to say this word as an indirect genitive, meaning you have a preposition between the two nouns. So this is what they call themselves, Remech ni Kemet, and you find this more frequently than the word commit to you, especially in the classical text. And finally, this would answer the question if, and I'm going to call your attention here, the Egyptians had only one term to designate themselves. Kemet, the Negroes. Actually, if we go back here, you go to the primary text, when we update the information, you would have to say, it would be more accurate to say the Egyptians had a term to designate themselves, and then you continue on. Not only one. So we updated, with the primary documentation. So now with this here, now this book, The Origin of the Egyptians, General History of Africa, Volume 2, this was published in 1981. Now, this here is reflections of conversations that occurred in the previous decade. However, Shekin Tejok, in his book, Prénate génétique de l'Égyptien pharaonique et des langues négro-africaines, then on page 250, and this is published in 1977. This is his linguistic work. He actually has the word Remech in his book. Now, there have been some questions as to the sources of the Wolof, but just for the sake of argument, we'll say that this is Wolof according to Jop, our ancestor, and it's still written in French. So on the left side, you have translates as the man par excellence, or le homme par excellence. And then here, this translates as species of a sparrow that passes for a human being according to Senegalese mythology. So we have, according to what's shown here, it would be in like the semantic range is within the same boundaries. And well, this comes from Jean-Claude Bowley's work, but we don't need to go into that. All right, sorry, did you want to comment on this at all? I'm not sure, maybe he stepped away. But the point here is we know that this term was used for people in the text. And it's a term that the Egyptians used for themselves. And we know that because we see the primary documentation here. And Ramesh, when they're referring to themselves, talking about the Egyptians, this is a short form. The total form would be Ramesh and Kemet. Or you just shorten it to say Ramesh. Mind you, this book is really hard to get. So. Yes, we do study all of Shekinah Job's work because he is a venerated ancestor, and some have felt that we disrespected Job. However, that is very untrue. We honor Job by going into his work and doing our best to understand his work.
All right. So
anybody wants to take note, but do you have any comments there, Woodjohn?
No, I think that kind of is a good spot to wrap things up because it puts into people's minds that what I said to preference it, that we have to understand the difference of our modern day notions of nationality, ethnicity, and race, and be careful not to retrofit it in ancient past when they had different inclusions and exclusion rules of how they defined and organized human populations and things, so I think that's good.
I'm sorry, just real quick, I'm sorry. I'm going to respond to ACL UNIA. Number one, the organization is very honorable, so we give honor and respect to the UNIA. So I'm going to say that now to the person with the name here. I think this person said that Ramesh means race. It does not. So no, it doesn't. It's a word for person or human being. It doesn't mean race.
Yeah, and we gotta just be. That's what I said. That's what I said. We, that will probably be another discussion because when we talk about race, we can't have that conversation without discussing the different notions of race. You have biological race, then you have the social construct of race, and then you have what race in and of itself means and why they're used by these various different disciplines and to begin with. And for us to we gotta unpack all of that to see what's appropriate to the ancient times and things in terms of lineage and things like that still wouldn't be the case because the Egyptian people that refer themselves as Remich were not all from the same lineage as well. We have so we can't we could talk about that, but it's we like 10 minutes over, so I do want to kind of wrap it up. And so does anybody have any closing remarks? Any last final word or words? No? Yes, no, maybe so. All right, well, I'll speak for everybody. We appreciate for those who participated, for those who tuned in. Hopefully you have some takeaways from this conversation, and it may lead to further discussions, and we'll be more than happy to do this again, give people, some more time. But now what I want to say is that this publication, again, was a complimentary publication for the ASCAT conference. Now, it all together, even though it's a 100-page publication, it's really just a prelude to a larger publication to be released later this year, where we're going to cover the four corners of the topic of the conversation. Okay, that being the meaning of the place name Kemet. So you can expect this information and a lot more detail and covering all of the bases on this particular topic. But that's going to come a little later. So so people that have maybe some disagreements possibly of this particular publication, all those things will be taken into consideration in the larger work. All right, where we're going to cover all the bases. So that's, one of the exchanges, the two sides of this exchange is for us to see, what's understood, what's misunderstood. Maybe we could word things different or add some things in there for clarification, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's a two-way thing. It's helping us out as well. And so look out for that upcoming publication. If you don't have this particular publication, again, shame on you. You should feel real guilty. But go to Amazon. It's there. And also other publications. So Saramotep has Illusion Volume 1 and many other publications on Amazon and his website. We have the Beginner's Introduction to Netcher on Amazon. We have the Rebuttal to the Decipherment. Has the Ancient Egyptian writing system been deciphered? A rebuttal to Professor Walter Williams. That's on Amazon. We also have the Simplified Penmanship book, because people need to learn how to write it. Now, I want to say something real quick about that. Now, I want you all to notice, if anybody who's been studying the language in any a good amount of time, you'll notice that the German School of Egyptology, in their publications are the ones that are most handwritten ones. And when these scholars of that school handwrite their text and documentation, they draw the glyphs, and all of them draw the glyphs the same way. They look very uniform among different scholars, and that's the same spirit that the ancient scribes did, where all up and down Kemet, and for over 3,000 years, the glyphs pretty much look the same, with some slight variations from major eras of time, but they pretty much look the same. And so today, if I were to ask everybody in the audience to draw, if I were to give you a list of like 5 glyphs to draw, everybody's drawing would, on your own, would be different. And so the penmanship, the modern penmanship course, and the reason why we stress it is we want to regain that standard. And so we have a specific way to draw the glyphs and everything. And Sister Emiket published the book, and it's available on Amazon. It's called the Simplified Penmanship. And I forget the whole title. Matter of fact, it's right here. Quick second. Simplified Sesh Medew Netcher Penmanship, a lesson in Egyptian hieroglyphic writing, book 1 for the Monoliterals. All right, so make sure you pick that up. And we're going to have classes. She's going to give a class on that in the near future. All right, so and the purpose of that is we want to reestablish this standard, as the ancient scribes did. And even the German school, like I said, they followed suit and among them. All right, so that's all I have. And does anybody else have anything? Any last words? Sanjay, you got anything?
I definitely would like to say, Dua U in Chennu, in the spirit of the conversation, that would translate as praises to you all, for participating with us. I think this was a productive dialogue here.
Hello? Greetings.
Greetings. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, so go ahead. You have some last remarks, brother?
Oh, wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I'm having interference.
Yeah, if you can hear me, we're closing out. So if you have any last remarks, then by all means. And if you don't, I'm going to assume you don't. Hopefully you can hear me. Why you muted yourself again? Okay, yeah, he's having problems. So go ahead, brother Sanjay. We're gonna close.
Okay, all right. So Dua and Chinnu. So that's praises to you all, for joining us in this panel, and those in the chat. I think this was a pretty good discussion. It was good. It was civilized. We got put out a lot of information. Yeah, and I look forward to doing more of these. This is what I'm talking about. It wasn't all that back and forth, people mischaracterizing each other, all that riffraff. I'm glad it wasn't here tonight. So, let's continue. So good job, everybody.
All right, definitely. And so with that, we don't want to do these long goodbyes. So I'm going to say Shem Hotep, which is when we depart, that's a departure greeting or departure phrase that we say. Shem Hotep, which is to leave in peace. Shem is to go. And we say Shem Hotep, and Goret Nefer, which is good night, or Bekan Nefer for those who are on the other side of the world in the morning. All right, so with that, I'll say Shem Hotep.
Shem Hotep.